Adjustment meeting, Monday, May 20th, 2019. I hereby declare this meeting of the Howell Township Zoning Board to be open. Adequate notice having been given pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act in the following manner. First, on January 15th, 2019, a copy of said notice was mailed to the Star Ledger and the Tri-Town News. Second, on January 15th, 2019, a copy of said notice was hand-delivered to the clerk of the Township of Howell. Third, on January 15th, 2019, said notice was posted in the office of the Zoning Board and on the bulletin board in the Howell Township Municipal Building, 4567 Route 9, Howell Township, New Jersey. Also, on May 6th, 2019, a notice was sent to the Asbury Park Press and the Star Ledger regarding the change in location and start time for today's hearing. A copy was also sent to the clerk of the township and posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building and in the office of the zoning board. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code and your safety, please be advised that this facility has emergency exits which are on your left at the front and rear of the cafeteria. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the building. Please take note that we are videotaping this for future possible broadcast on Howell Township TV 77. Please be advised that this meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues of what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and the decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. On one other note, if anyone feels that you have been inconvenienced by the location, please note that this was the only school available this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. Please have a roll call, please.
Mr. Hughes.
Here.
Mr. Massa.
Here.
Mr. Mertens.
Here.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Here.
Mr. Orozco.
Here.
Mr. St. Clemente.
Here.
Mr. Saya.
Here.
Mr. Moretti.
Present.
And Chairman Nansen.
Here.
You have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Professionals, please.
Mr. Howard will swear.
Thank you. Approval of minutes.
No minutes.
Vouchers,
We have no vouchers this evening.
correspondence.
Yes, I have a letter from Sean Connolly. His application is on the agenda for this evening. He is in the process of securing the easements for his property, and he's waiting for his letter of interpretation. He asks that the board carry his application from May 20th to September 23rd, 2019 with no further notice. He also granted the board an extension of time to act on his application through September 30th, 2019.
Okay, anyone in the audience for case number BA 1804, Sean and Christina Conley? Seeing none, this case will be carried to September 23rd, 7:30 p.m. with no further notice.
I also have a letter from William Wenzel. He is the attorney for Route 9 Hardscape Supply Yard LLC. We had an email exchange and a telephone conversation on May 1st. He agreed to carry the application for Route 9 Hardscape, which was scheduled for this evening, to June 10th, 2019. He asked that the board please carry it with no further notice and granted an extension of time through June 10th, 2019.
What's the date?
June 10th.
Okay, and this is just for voting, correct?
Yes, and he has received his LOI.
Okay, anyone in the audience for case number BA 1708, Route 9 Hardscape Supply Yard LLC? This case will be carried to June 10th with no further notice at 7:30 p.m.
And I don't have a letter, but I did speak to the attorney, Christopher Olzak, for John Blewett, Inc. He was scheduled for this evening, and to leave the docket open for the case that we are about to hear, he agreed to be carried to June 10th, 2019 with no further notice, and his expiration date is until June 15th, so he's good.
Anyone here for case number DA 1817, John Blewett, Inc.? Seeing none, this case will be carried to June 10th, 7:30 p.m. with no further notice.
I have no further correspondence, thank you.
Okay, resolutions.
There are no resolutions this evening.
Okay, the application before the board, case number BA 18806, L&L Paving Company, Inc. It's a use variance preliminary and final major site plan. The case has been heard and completed, and we're now to the public comment portion of this case. Okay, Mr. Tropoli.
Gentlemen, is everyone here first of all? Speak up a little louder. I'd like to have appearances of counsel for the record, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Michael Butler from law firm Becker Stevens on behalf of the applicant L&L Paving.
John Paul Doyle, firm of Carluccio, Leone, Diamond, Doyle, and Sachs, Toms River, on behalf of Mr. Bola Lease.
Thank you. My understanding, gentlemen, is that testimony's been completed and we are now ready for public, correct, Mr. Butler?
Correct, Mr.
Mr.
Trustee.
Doyle?
Understood, yes.
Speaking with the chair and noticing that there's probably, I would estimate, 250 people here, if not more. There are some procedures which I'd like to go over. In consultation with the chair, it's my understanding that there will be time limits. It is the board's intention to bring this matter to a vote this evening. That is the intention, and the board intends to stay fairly late. I can't exactly tell you what that means, but the reason I mention it is not so that people will not have an opportunity to speak, but just consider what you're saying. There will be no questions from the attorneys, there will be no questions from me or members of the board. It'll be your opportunity to speak, but there will be time limits. And I'm sure many of you will not be pleased with it, but the chair is imposing a 2-minute time limit so that we can have everyone to be heard. Perhaps there can be some relaxation. We don't know how many people are going to be testifying. Okay? The manner in which you will testify will be at the center microphone. You'll note, and for the ones way in the back, it's right here, almost between the two attorneys facing the board. The reason I mention this is because I, as an attorney, want to respect everyone's opinion, and I know the board does. The board wants to hear from people. But as you come up to the microphone, please remember, do not be repetitive. It's obvious and it's understood that there are people that are for the application and opposed to the application. Remember, the board here, they're the deciders of fact. So use your time wisely, make your points, and move on. That would be the best thing I can say. If it's a little bit over 2 minutes, I'm sure the chair is not going to shout anyone down, but in order to get through everyone, we need to do this. The procedure, though, also will be that everyone who comes forward will have to give their name, and I will have to swear in everyone. Give your address, and then the 2 minutes will begin. And again, nobody will be commenting. There's no questions of you. You can say whatever you wish relative to the application. And with that, Mr. Chair, unless you have any further comments, I think we should begin. Gentlemen, are we ready to proceed then? Any questions? Mr. Boyle?
No questions, Mr. Doyle.
Any questions from professionals? Board members? What I'm going to ask you to do, is just form a line right down the center aisle, and you'll be sworn in, and
Raise your right hand, please, to swear that the testimony you give will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but truth, so help you.
Absolutely.
All right, put your hand out, please, give us your name and your address.
Donald Day, Normal Street. I have 120 Howell, New Jersey, 731. N-O-L-L. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say something. I've been a resident of this town for 11 years, and I don't know if it's a matter of need or greed with you members of this board, but right now, from Ford Road all the way up past your municipal building, all you see is vacant buildings left and right. Right now in this township, it is at an all-time high of homes for sale. You know, here you're going to allow a business here that does absolutely no employment unless, excuse me, I talked to a few of you, unless you have a CBL license. Unfortunately, I can't get one. I'm a disabled vet, so that rules me out automatically. You know, and it probably rule out half of these people that never work here. A medical building, something like that would be great there. There's an asphalt plant right across there. I don't like to be lied to, and I believe their lawyer and also the gentleman that was sitting there, we could, they told me, said, oh, we do not sell it to them. Sorry. I called Stavola and asked them, was that true? And they said, no, they'd be more than glad to sell to them any time if they took care of a small matter, which legally they told me they could not tell me what it was. So they lied, therefore they told me they would not sell. All their hypothetical people that they did research, there wasn't one other company that they thought about with all that traffic going down on Cranberry and out to 33 and everywhere else. We do not need this. You have all these homeowners there that own homes, and all that's going to do is bring the taxes down, more homes for sale in this town. I own one, my son owns one. Like I said, check the research. There's so many homes because people want to get out of here now. You tell me why. I moved here because it's a beautiful place. I couldn't find a place 11 years ago. Now, they're all over. Find out why. Why do we have so many buildings vacant and constantly getting more vacant? But we'll allow all these to move from 9 north to go next to Walmart and take down 5 acres of trees and put 12 tiny little trees up. Here they're going to take down 2 acres of environment. And my daughter's at my 2 minutes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I think you say no to this. And I'm pretty sure most of these people want the same thing. No.
Please hold your applause. It takes more time than we're going to have tonight. Please hold your applause. I do.
Yes, it's John Jordan on 25 East Grimaldi Drive in Howell. I have some prepared comments. My topic is on gentrification. Whenever I began your decision tonight, it is incumbent to consider the public good as being of paramount importance. The number of residents in the vicinity of this proposed asphalt plant has increased significantly in the last 10 years. The residential gentrification cannot be summarily dismissed or ignored. The proposed site containing 6 90-foot silos, potential toxins from the asphalt, numerous noises emanating from the plant site, as well as increased traffic, not only during the day, but with noisy traffic during the late evening and early mornings, will impair the sleep of neighboring residents, clearly impedes the public good. As the chairman of the Equestria Civic Issues Committee, Senior Development, I attempted on December 3rd of last year to give the board a copy of a 429 signature petition of residents and was told that we couldn't because of your rules with the right to cross-examine all 429. But I think it's important that you just know that we had this petition, and it's good to know that the residents in the area, most of whom are here tonight, had opposed this. Planning board and the mayor and council recognized the gentrification of the area that complemented the existing homes in the vicinity with over 450 homes and residents, an overwhelming concern for the public good, which has then resulted in, as you know, the 217 ordinance banning asphalt plants. My sincere request is that you acknowledge that this project is in fact detrimental to the public good and deny it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Your name and your address, we can please get a little closer to the mic. Thank you.
William Barr. William Barr, B-A-H-R.
Thank you, sir.
All right, to start off with, I'm a resident of Yellowbrook Road for 54 years, 55 years, 1965, whatever that is. I used to be able to walk the length of Yellowbrook Road, the whole mile and a half, without having to move for a car coming down the road at that time. Things have changed, haven't they? They really have. Now, I just would like to say something about L&L paving. I saw them take over a rundown, beat-up, crappy concrete pipe plant with concrete poured all over in the back, concrete pipes all over the place, and in a couple years, make the place into a show place. They put up walls, they planted trees, they have grass which they keep mowed, which looks really nice. If you take a look at their parking lot, every single employee's car is parked in a perfect line, nothing out of order. They come in at night, every single one of their trucks, depending on what kind of a truck it is, are parked in a perfect line. The place is really kept well. You know, they want to put up an asphalt plant, a high-tech plant like nothing else in the state of New Jersey. They could buy asphalt from Stavola, but I got it from one of the scale guys that used to work for Stavola, that the reason they don't is because Stavola used to charge them $13 to $15 a ton more than anybody else ever paid. So how can they be competitive when they're doing the job and have to bid and have to go do a bid with $13 to $15 more money? Just doesn't make sense. You know, talking to a lady in the back, and she said, what about the trucks that run at night? Noisy trucks. I live on Cranberry Road. Well, I live on Yellowbrook Road, and I don't hear any trucks. The only trucks I hear is when Stavola has a big job and they have to run trucks all night long. Then I can hear Galderies and all the trucking companies running that asphalt past my house. That's the only trucks I hear. Otherwise, I sleep like a baby. In finishing, I would like to say to this young lady that I was talking to in the back, I went to reach out and touch her on the shoulder, and she jumped back and said, don't touch me. Well, lady, I'm an 88-year-old retired Navy lieutenant. I don't have any diseases. I don't have anything wrong with me. The only thing I have is a broken neck from a real bad truck accident where a tractor and trailer hit me in the back doing 55 miles an hour. I'm sorry, and I apologize to you for reaching out to touch you, but again, I don't have any disease. And I apologize for the way my hair is, because with a collar like this on, you really can't comb your hair too well. Thanks for my time.
Thank you. Hey, you can take it out of the break.
My name is Abraham, the 20 West Boston Lane. 20 West Boccio Lane in Howell. I have prepared remarks, it will take 7 minutes, but I've cut it down hopefully so that I can get in here to I want. Otherwise, I have an extra copy that I will be glad to give to the board.
Just remember speaking to the mic.
I'll do my. Some of the arguments you'll hear tonight are the same ones the planning board and the township council considered and accepted in 2017 when they prohibited further asphalt plants anywhere in the township. Nothing has changed for the better. This is not the first time this board has had to rule on an application for this order. Less than 1 short month ago, you denied the application of StoneQuest to use its property to construct a concrete block manufacturing and on the ground that the use had been specifically banned in SED zones. It will probably be argued that that case was different because it involved introducing a new use into a different kind of SED zone called SED1. Well, this application is in a zone with so-called compatible non-conforming uses. But to pretend to make that distinction would be a clear usurpation of the power of the township council. If the council had wanted to prohibit asphalt plants in all other SED zones, but allow them to continue to proliferate in the Yellowbrook Road SED zone, they could have carved it out and created a new SED2 zone. In fact, before they voted unanimously to adopt this ordinance as proposed without making changes, they were asked to do just that by the attorney for the George Arms Construction Company. But interestingly, not by the representative of L&L, who was there and also addressed the council earlier that evening. The general public is not currently being deprived of access to asphalt. The Department of Transportation has published a list of 49 asphalt plants in the state of New Jersey, including 10 operated by 4 different providers, which are within a 35-mile driving radius of the proposed site. I have a copy of this, which I'd be glad to share with the board.
Just so you know, you are close to 3 minutes, but I've asked the chair practically every meeting. I asked the chair to give you a couple more minutes.
And Mr. Chasnoff, can you identify where this list came from?
It came from the website of the state of New Jersey, Department of Transportation, just as it says on the title of the first page.
I have no objection to it.
No objection. No objection.
Okay, Mr. Chasnoff, you can go ahead. You're back on the clock.
Thank you. Back on the clock. I'll keep it short. Despite the Township Council's action specifically banning asphalt plants in all of the SED zones in the township, L&L argues that the site is particularly suited for the proposed use because it is similar to other existing businesses in the zone. That's a non sequitur. Those other businesses are now also rendered non-conforming by the same ordinance we're dealing with. A review of the video of the transcript of the council meeting will demonstrate that they were well aware of what they were doing. The grant of this variance will only increase the number of non-conforming businesses in this zone and will increase the size of the overall non-conformity by 35 acres. At your April 22nd meeting, the former chair of the Howell Environmental Commission, Lee Frankhauser, talked about the elephant in the room and warned that it would set a dangerous precedent if you granted a variance for a use that was specifically prohibited by the Township Council. You listened to him then. You should heed his warning again tonight. For the record,
Wrap it up. Yes, please.
For the record, the Department of Transportation has listed 10 asphalt plants in the 35-mile radius. 4 of them are Stavola Asphalt at 0 miles, at 8.9 miles, at 13 miles, and at 14 miles. The Central Jersey Hot Mix in Jackson is 14.4 miles. The Walter Earl Corporation in Jackson is 14.8 miles. The Stavola plant in Old Bridge is 20.1 miles. Trap Rock Industries is 21 miles. Trap Rock Industries in Catesby, I will be there in a minute, 2 lines. Catesby is 27.7 miles, and Trap Rock Industries in Edison is 32.2 miles. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, I do.
And may we have your name and your address, please?
Adam Seyhan, 22 East Milan Boulevard, Farmingdale, New Jersey, 07727. Dear members of the zoning board, asphalt is a petroleum product. North American Industry Classification System classify asphalt plants under subsector 3 to 4 for petroleum and coal products manufacturing, and concrete pipe systems under subsector 3 to 7 for non-metallic mineral product manufacturing. By the way, stone product manufacturing is also listed under the same subsector as concrete. A CD zone specification does not list any petroleum-related facilities among permitted uses. Therefore, the asphalt plant was not a permitted use in a CD zone even before the town council decided to ban the asphalt plants. Asphalt is flammable. If you just search online for asphalt plant fires, you'll find numerous fires happening every year. Asphalt is toxic. According to the study conducted by National Park Service, quote, the main hazard associated with asphalt is from the polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons in asphalt that can move into the ecosystem from the breakdown of asphalt. Asphalt is considered a potential carcinogen, cancer-causing, due to the fact it typically may contain many carcinogenic compounds. Current National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health research indicates that asphalt products are carcinogenic to laboratory animals. According to environmental impact report submitted by the applicant, page 6, the plant has the ability to manufacture 400 tons of material per hour. But the applicant estimates they will produce only about 200,000 tons per year. If that was a real intention, they could have applied for a plant with a capacity about 100 tons per hour. Then why are they planning to build a 400 tons per hour plant? 4 times larger than the national average for a continuous plant. Do you think any company can operate at 25% of the capacity and expect to make money? When you approve this project, you will not be approving 200,000 tons per year. You will be approving 400 tons per hour plant operating 58 hours per week for 9 months in one shift alone.
Mr. Shepard, need to wrap it up.
When they work on full capacity, even with just one shift, there will be 128,000 trucks coming in and out, carrying among other materials more than 800,000 tons or 1.6 billion pounds of the hot.
Please wrap it up.
It's not, this is not, excuse me, sir. Excuse me one moment. Pardon me. Excuse me, I want to address that comment because of time.
Excuse me, but in the last meeting you said...
Sir, let me speak, sir, and I'll let you speak. Really, I'm trying to be respectful, and I am. We cannot ask anyone to cede time. If that's the case, you'll have some people speaking for 45 minutes. It's 2 minutes. We'll try to be a little bit more liberal, and we have been. I would like to know at this point, and again, sir, we're not taking your time away, how many more people in the audience just haven't stood up yet? What would you say, 20 more? We'll try to be as liberal as we can, but we can't start ceding time to people. This is not something that is within our ability to do. Okay.
Sir, you did, Mr. Chairman said in the last meeting that there will be no time limits, and that's why you are prepared.
Let me address that. I said that, but there was only like 30 or 40 people in the audience. That's it. Those people were the ones that had made, I would say, 80 to 90% of the meetings, like yourself. And I realize that, just like I do Abe. That's why I let him speak longer. That's why I let you speak longer. I was just asking you to wrap it up because we're getting close to 5 minutes here. And that's all. I'm being as liberal as I can about it. You know, the last meeting at the town hall, that's when we had to make a decision that we had to do a time limit. Because if you've got 200 people, each one come up in unlimited time, we'll be here for a month. We've got to wrap this up. And that's what I'm saying. It's got to be wrapped up. Okay, continue. Sir.
In the last 34 years of my career as a chemical engineer, I worked in design, engineering, procurement, and construction of chemical or refinery projects. I never worked on an asphalt plant, but I have been to the sites of similar facilities. I saw how such plants detrimentally impacted the neighborhoods. Communities like Equestria cannot coexist with such large industrial facility in the same neighborhood.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Please, don't do that. This is an important proceeding. You have your opportunity to speak. I want to move this. Every time you clap, it takes 4 or 5 minutes off the clock. So let's just keep your applause down, please.
Let me to just wrap it up. In short, asphalt is a petroleum product that was never allowed in SCD zones. Asphalt does not contain concrete. Asphalt is flammable. Asphalt is a carcinogen. This plant is a mega project and will create chaos with traffic and traffic safety in Howell and Farmingdale. Please do not approve this project. Thank you.
Folks, I know everybody's interested, and I respect that. Please try to restrain yourself with the clapping. You're cutting into people's time, and you're cutting into
It's all lies you're talking about.
And again, no calling out, please. Again, I have a record to protect, good or bad. Okay, I'm the one who's going to have to be the one who, in the end, deals with whatever the aftermath is. The clapping is really not helpful to either one of these gentlemen here. They are professionals, and I respect them, and I would ask that you respect them as well. Sir, let me swear you in.
I do. Les Spindell, 46 West Da Vinci Way in Howell. The asphalt manufacturing plant application is for a site in an industrial zone. Industrial zones do have noise. The major difference for this use is nighttime noise. I live close to Cranberry Road, and there is minimal nighttime activity and truck traffic except during a snowstorm when the county road department is sending out trucks for the snow removal. Nighttime trucks do cause significant noise, but the difference is it seldom happens. That's why there aren't complaints about nighttime noise. This is different. It was testified that many large paving jobs are done at night. That will require many trucks to come in and leave all night with asphalt and milling. As the gentleman over here was saying, on Yellowbrook Road, when does he get nighttime truck traffic? When there's a paving job from Stavola. Okay, that's what's going to happen, except many times that if we have yet another plant. There were a lot of things during the proceedings that were called hypothetical. Everything except the business plan that called for 200,000 tons per year was hypothetical. Hypothetical means speculative and assumed, which is exactly what a business plan is. Did Steve Jobs' business plan call for $1 trillion company when he started Apple? Did Sears and Toys R Us business plans call for them to go bankrupt? Business plans are obviously speculative and assumed, but let's see what happens with 200,000 tons of production. It was proven in testimony that asphalt plant nighttime truck traffic will exceed the New Jersey DEP noise control regulations and will cause sleep interruptions at many homes. From page 5 of the state noise control regulation and the model noise control ordinance, January 15, 2015, during the nighttime hours of 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., the permissible limit of 50 decibels is meant to protect sleep. This is based on work from the Department of Health, New Jersey DEP, and New Jersey Noise Control Council. The U.S. Department of Transportation traffic noise model states on page 8, heavy trucks generate 75 to 80 decibels of noise. The testimony showed that many houses are close enough to the roads that these truck traffic noises will exceed the 50 decibel limit, resulting in sleep interruption. We've talked about sleep interruption on Yellowbrook and Cranberry, but these trucks will pass many more homes on their way to major highways. Do the math, 1,800 tons from the silos for a large nighttime paving job. At 25 tons per truck, a 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. job with trucks in and out is 144 trucks over 7 hours, or a truck every 3 minutes all night long. All sleepers will be disturbed. Light sleepers will be up all night. It was testified most asphalt is used for nighttime paving. So even if we assume half of the 200,000 tons, 100,000 tons is used for nighttime, 1,800 ton jobs would require 56 nights during a year of no sleep. At 500,000 tons, with 1 million ton capacity, and using half of that at night, it's 278 nights. Another comment during testimony was that currently allowed uses in the zone could have traffic. If it is an allowed use, that could be the case. But those uses are hypothetical, this one is not. Those uses are allowed, this one is not. And it was testified that an asphalt plant will have a lot more nighttime traffic than a warehouse or a medical office. But in any case, this use is not allowed, and it will definitely have a negative impact. It is clearly different in terms of its impact than the previous uses at this site. None of the previous uses had large number of trucks at night. Making concrete pipe is not manufacturing asphalt, as previous speakers have said. Please respect the ordinance from our elected representatives and the concerns of many Howell residents, and vote this down.
Yes, I do. Greg Gallo, 15 Cary Drive. I've been a resident of this town for 15 years. I can count on one hand how many have had a reaction from the community like tonight. I think just from a board perspective, I know you've heard a lot of testimony from a few weeks ago, and then tonight, I want you to say, I'm opposed to the project. I want you to use some common sense. When you look at the reaction of nights like tonight, please use some common sense. Think of the residents. I live in Cary Drive. That's about 2 miles from here. My son went to school here. I'm nowhere near this project. This will have zero impact on me personally or my family. But how this does impact the community, I don't know. I haven't seen the studies for the potential revenue expense. I know from a common sense perspective that those trucks are going to beat the heck out of those roads. Infrastructure costs we will bear, taxpayers in Howell will bear some of that cost. I don't know what revenues will come in to offset it, but I can't imagine it being anywhere near. How the revenues in town get impacted by potential depreciation, this is where it hits home. My in-laws live in Bergen County. That's where I grew up. They want to move down to Howell. My son's got a basketball game in an hour for the high school. They want to come down and decide to drive from Bergen County. They want to be in town so they can go see them play. You look at the number of communities where 55 and over communities exist. Equestria's one of them. It's not on my list for them to move to if this project happens. And that's going to affect everyone that's in here from Equestria.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is, and I live at 17 West Campagna Road in Howell. Just in front of me, the condition of the roads in and around L&L now are horrific. Just imagine what's going to go on once they start operating on a 24-hour basis. Additionally, if you go up and down Main Street in Farmingdale, it's almost impossible now not to be waiting 2-3 minutes to 5 minutes to pull out of any driveway or any of the commercial establishments, only because of the heavy truck traffic, which did not exist 6 to 8 months ago. The only additional point I want to make, and I think is important, just by the amount of people that are here tonight, how many people do you think that live in Equestria now, which is 489 homes, would have bought homes there and paying taxes there if this was already an established corporation running and producing asphalt? I don't think too many people would have been there or buying homes. Thank you.
I think so. Okay, I guess it works. I do. My name is Jorge Pardes. I live at 20 East Francesa in Equestria. I'm a Yeah, Pardes. I come from the land of the Pope. So coming back to us, I'm a practicing physician. I want to touch upon subjects that were from the medical point of view. I hear you. Okay, so I'll talk loud. Hello, okay. I don't like the microphone. Should I try? I can talk loud. I can try loud. From the medical point of view, there's things that we cannot take back. And that takes precedence for all of us over money, anything else. Okay? I'll just mention briefly the things that have been associated to asphalt, the illnesses and problems, and these are not the most severe. I'll come to those. But commonplace with those volatile fumes that travel quite a distance. You have headaches, skin rash, sensitization, fatigue, decreased appetite, throat and eye irritation, cough, and then comes the big one, which is cancer. It's been associated to skin cancer, to lung cancer, to stomach cancer, and bladder cancer. And again, those are not things we can take back. They talk about chronic exposure. That's what we have living day in, day out in the community. One of the biggest concerns is respiratory, and there's people with severe asthma, COPD, etc. in our community and all around outside of Equestra. It also affects the kids that go to the schools that are closest. So this school is far, but the plant is 1.5 miles away from the gross center. It is 2 miles away from the middle school north, and is 2.4 miles away from the high school. From the Equestra, it's 2.5 miles. In terms of the fuels, that's nothing. The fuel will carry. If there's dust produced with the cement plant, you'll go with it. So I don't know if any of you live in the community. It's going to affect you, your kids, your grandkids, whoever else, and you can't go back on that. The responsibility is all up to us. I don't think anyone wants to live with the responsibility that they cause problems like this. Okay. In any case, addressing briefly the question of the trucks, the diesel oil that is used, okay, and with the runoff will help to poison the grounds. Okay? Well, this is in the literature. I'll be glad to provide a bibliography if any of you guys like. Guys or gals like. With respect to the sleep problems, sleep deprivation is really hazardous to your health, and it's hazardous enough that it's used as a method of torture. So it's not a joke. You have these seniors who have lived their lives somewhere else and have come to Howell because they like the community, and all of a sudden the payback will be for them not to be able to sleep. I'm coming to the end, but along with the traffic, I get out to work at 6:15 in the morning, and sometimes it's hard even at that time. I can't imagine a truck every 3 minutes barreling through Route 33. It's going to be impossible, and there will be many accidents because people fly through there. They don't drive, they fly. So when you consider what to do with this, besides nickel and cents, think of the effects that cannot be taken back, and that affect not just us, but all of you. How many of you live in the area? I'd like to know. Or no one wants to tell me.
These are all house residents, so just for the record, but you can't answer that. I just want this is just.
Okay, I appreciate that, but I think I get the gist of it. So when you make this final decision, think about the health.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Brendan Judge. I'm with the law firm of Connell Foley. We represent George Harms Construction, 62 Yellowwood Road in Howell. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm here tonight to speak in favor of this application. I've attended all the hearings.
Please, he's giving you courtesy, we're giving you courtesy, give the speaker courtesy, please.
Thank you. I've listened to all the testimony, and one thing is clear. The use proposed by the applicant is substantially similar to the prior use at the subject site, as well as other uses within the SED zone. Therefore, this site is particularly suited for the use and granting the application will not substantially harm the zoning law, the zoning ordinance, or the zoning plan. Moreover, it will not be detrimental to the public health. Like everybody else in this room, including the applicant, George Farms Construction is concerned about truck traffic on Yellow Book Road, especially at the intersection of Route 33. Both the applicant's expert and the objector's expert testified that that intersection already merits a failing score. That's an existing condition. The traffic experts also testified that site improvements at that intersection, including a traffic light and a right-hand turn lane, will eliminate that problem. So George Farms Construction joins the applicant in encouraging the township to do anything it can do to convince the DOT to improve that intersection. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Sagamore Drive. I'm not sure this mic is catching me. Okay, great. Monroe. Yes. I have been in attendance at these meetings from planning and through zoning. And I want to, for the record, state the impacts, the negative impacts that I personally will suffer. They've been stated by other speakers. I want them on the record as my own. I am very concerned about the air pollution. I'm very concerned about the traffic. I am very concerned about the noise, particularly at night. It makes no sense to me that anyone would underutilize a plant. I anticipate that should you, board, approve this waiver, should this plant be built, I anticipate for a very long time a great deal more night traffic than we have ever experienced. I do not predict for myself in my home a high quality life on Route 33 along that corridor. Further, your planner has let us know that this is fine to have this plant here because we already have plants on that road. As a resident, I am resentful of that. I feel that we already have enough difficulty with traffic, particularly heavy truck traffic. We already have enough difficulty with pollution. I don't know if our zoning board planner is aware that on any given day in Farmingdale, air quality is moderate at best. I like to compare Howell Township. I don't know where air is measured in Howell Township, but Howell Township often has good air quality. Manhattan, New York City, often has good air quality. Farmingdale has poor air quality. I think we already have enough pollutants in our air on the 33 corridor, and I would assume that most of it is due to the overwhelming traffic. We already have enough traffic there. Adding more simply because there's already a lot does not make sense to me. Please consider this, board members, Chairman Manson. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Walter Mazer, 176 West Dale, New Jersey. Quite a few of the meetings. I sat through probably about 95% and listened to all the testimony from the experts as well as the response from the board. There are a few things that stood out that I would like to make note of. At the December 3rd meeting, Lance Ridielli stated he had no business plan. He stated that he and his brother just talked about it and it was a good idea to start this plan. I really find it difficult to believe that some type of business plan showing the future growth projections regarding the business volume and the return on investment weren't needed for either the bank, investors, or even for themselves to determine if this would be a good idea. And the reason I make note of that, if there is a business plan, it should have been submitted to the zoning board or the town or whomever regarding the production volumes. Knowing this information would show the real impact that the traffic, the noise, and the air quality will have on the surrounding community. Another point is, at several meetings, when the Stavola experts pointed out errors in what was presented by L&L and the Howell experts, such as incorrect or missing information regarding the surveys or the applicant's planners misrepresenting facts. The chairman stated he'll stand by what his experts say, and that is all that he will allow. If you look at the totality of the testimony, there's a pattern of deceit here. And why can't there be a review by an independent third party to look at that information and give their opinion regarding the misrepresented facts? What was also very disturbing at several meetings is that when the L&L experts were speaking, the chairman allowed them as much time as they needed. It was like having a lucky day there. But when it came time for Mr. Doyle's experts to speak, he was told many times to hurry along, and he was under time constraints. That was insulting to Mr. Doyle, his experts, as well as the public. And I know we can't ask questions, but Mr. Chairman, you said at one of the meetings that you live on Yellowbrook Road. It's public fact that you own 20 acres on there. Did L&L Paving ever offer to buy your property now or in the future? Wouldn't your property value increase if it's designated an industrial zone? Everybody knows commercial property has more value.
Sir, those questions are not pertaining to this application. Excuse me in the background. I respect what you're saying, respect what I'm saying. Sir, comments only. Thank you.
Okay, but it was made a matter of public record by the chairman himself at one of the meetings. So therefore, it is on public record. So I stand by my comment there. And if that should happen now or in the future, anything related to the approval of this license or whatever it is should be revoked immediately if that property is ever purchased. I mean, it's difficult to understand how he can be chairman, sit here, live on Gilbert Road, and not be a conflict of interest. Attorney sitting here not challenging it makes us wonder. And I speak for the public, basically. So, and, okay, thank you.
The board is going to take a 10-minute break.
Folks, it's your chairman's prerogative to take a break. We ask that you relax, take 10 minutes, go outside, enjoy it. We'll be back in 10 minutes. Thank you.
There's only 4 of us, hurry, please. Everyone, please take your seats.
Grandkids and nothing else. Most I think about is what's damn money in their pocket. Yes, thank you.
Ralph Citarella, 1039 Maxon Southern Road. Citarella. Okay. It seems like there's a lot of hysteria because people get worked up over things, especially with liars into their house, saying a lot of things that just aren't true, with a lot of people not knowing the facts. But the thing that comes to mind to me is the 2 main concerns people have is health reasons and trucks. That seems to be what people are most concerned about from what I'm hearing. I just want to say that I'm in favor of it, and Larry and Lance are building a state-of-the-art facility that is in contrast to the old and antiquated facility that's only about 400 feet from the same road that no one seems to care about, which I find rather odd. This will be modern and made to today's concerns. As far as health effects, no one will be spending as much time there as Larry and Lance themselves, as well as their wives and children. Why wouldn't they care about health risks the most when they have the most to lose? As far as the trucks having 2 facilities producing asphalt doesn't create more of a demand for it, it just lowers the price. And monopolies aren't the greatest thing in the world. So I just wanted to say that I'm for it, and there's a lot of other people that are definitely for it, but when people are against something, they come in droves and they're more outspoken about it. So don't let the flaws or lack of it pass away. Thank you.
Yes, I do. Carmen Corsione, 7 East Corsica Court in Howell. I would just like to remind the board that tonight you are not approving or voting for an approved business. What you are voting for is a variance for a prohibited business. This business was prohibited by the township for very good reasons. Now it's the board's fiduciary responsibility to ensure that the benefits from this prohibited business far outweigh the detriment to the community if you so choose to approve it. Just remember one thing, that the people here tonight pay taxes to the community. They pay substantial taxes, far outweighing any taxes that LNL will be paying to the community. It's your responsibility to be watching out for the community and to represent us, not representing LNL. So remember, they are a prohibited business, and for them to say that, well, our business won't be much worse than what's already there. The businesses that are already there are not prohibited. LNL is prohibited. You have, again, a fiduciary responsibility to ensure that any benefits far, far outweigh the detriment to the community, not just that they're just okay. Thank you.
I did. Scott Madriperla, 4 East Raphael, Equestria. I think it's pretty clear that a good number of people here tonight are from Equestria and opposed to this proposal, with good reason. You know, they're worried, they're concerned, you know, they care about their quality of life, they care about their safety, they care about their health. They moved here into a community that the same zoning board approved for a senior lifestyle of peace and safety that they could enjoy. And we're here and we pay a lot of taxes, I think $6 million from our community. And you're here to represent us, all of Howell, which we're a good part of the community. And what confuses me is, and the point was brought up by the prior speaker, in my mind it's simple. It's like cost versus you know, risk or benefit, cost versus benefit. And it seems that there's a tremendous amount of cost that will be paid by the residents of Equestria, a tremendous amount of cost. And what are the benefits for this facility being built? So I know that you represent us, and I know you're all good people and want to do the right thing, and I encourage you to not allow this particular facility to be built. Thank you.
I do. Yvonne Lorenzo, 72 East Milan Boulevard. Everyone has come up forward and spoken pretty intellectually about their concerns and how they feel, why this shouldn't be here. And I think there were 2 people who came and spoke for it. One of them was an attorney, and I did not hear anything from him that could equivocate all those concerns that were stated by the rabble or the hysteria from my cohorts at Equestria. So that concerns me, because I wonder, what are the benefits, and why when they get up are we not hearing those benefits? So I've heard a lot of words bandied about, like respect and let me hear you and things, but I see eye rollings, and I know very often that sometimes we have already made a decision before we listen to, everybody says senior citizens are coming in. We're not all senior citizens that live there, but we're coming in, and because we all have the same concerns. Maybe because we have the time to research it, and we know, and we've been around a long time, and we can have experienced a lot of things. People have said to you that you do support, you are representing us, and you have to have our ideals and things that help us in your eye line when you make your decisions. We do pay well over $6 million. I myself pay close to $15,000 to live in Equestria. My taxes, without any children in schools, as well as all the people who live in Equestria, really take up a big bulk of taxes here. So we do really have a real say here because we don't want to see that go away. We like where we live, we like how we live, we want to keep it that way. I implore you, listen to them. Don't just take what they say with a grain of salt. They did their research and they spoke to you from their hearts. So I appreciate you listening to us, and I really hope you'll take their concerns, our concerns, into heart.
Susan Callahan, 28 West Chaucer Lane in Equestria. I don't have pages of research and statistics. I came up here to speak from my heart. I came from New York. I lived there my whole life, and our dream was to come to New Jersey. New York is overpopulated, it's loud, it's noisy, it's polluted. Finally, after 25 years, our dream came true. We sold our house, took everything we had to come over to our state, New Jersey, that we dreamed of. We were lucky enough to find Howell, Farmingdale. It's bucolic. There were horses all around. I couldn't have been happier. We love it here. And now to have this, we are on the west side. This is literally in our backyard. We don't have a big house. We don't have a lot of property. But our joy is to sit outside every single day and breathe in that fresh air. That's going to go away. The trucks are a concern. Everything like that is a concern, absolutely. But if there are health concerns, we're mostly senior citizens. We came here to live out whatever time we have left and enjoy this beautiful state. So the only thing I ask you is, when you make this decision, go into your heart and not just your heads. Thank you.
Yes, I do. My name is Lucinda Monica, 40 West Da Vinci Lane, Farmingdale. I am concerned about the dangers of this proposed asphalt plant, the dangers to the environment for the air, plants, animals, and humans. Also, I am concerned about safety in terms of car accidents and with trucks especially. I was in a very bad car accident in 1981 in Howell Township, Herbertville Road, and I almost was killed. And since I've lived at Equestria, I'm nervous every time I leave my house and go try to get out to Route 33. And it's a very bad intersection on the corner of Yellowbrook Road and 33, and also coming into our development. People don't want to stop for us to turn and come into our development. It's very dangerous, and I'm afraid of the trucks adding to the traffic that we already have. It's quite bad. I understand that when asphalt is produced, it has to be taken to the plants or wherever they deliver it hot. It has to be hot. So therefore, speed is of the essence. They have to, I understand the drivers have to go as fast as they can and maybe take shortcuts, I don't know, but fast trucks with asphalt in them driving fast at night, really. And I don't want to have another accident or see other people hurt by that. Thank you.
I do. My name is Rich Nocerino. I live at 100 East Bosbury Boulevard in Farmingdale, New Jersey. I'm an Equestria resident. Rich Nocerino, Nocerino. First of all, I just want to say I'm a little to the board. I feel a little insulted tonight because a core of us Equestria residents have gone to almost every single meeting for the last year and a half that you guys have been part of. And then to come up and we sat and listened to both attorneys, cross-examine, go back and forth, and we sat patiently to have a voice. And you want to tell us we have 2 minutes? I really find that insulting. Okay? Do you have anything else? What? Oh, I do. Oh, I do. So, With that being said, I've heard the traffic reports from Dolan and Dean, that, the truck is gonna take at least 50 seconds to make a left-hand turn on Business 33, okay? Once that truck gets on the highway, a 27-ton truck, does anybody know how long it takes? I know you're not gonna answer my question. Before it gets up to speed, at least 20 seconds to get up to speed. And most of these trucks, these tandem trucks, are pulling over to the right lane along the fence till they get up to speed. You know it, I know it, there's gonna be an accident. So is there gonna be support, whether this does or doesn't go through tonight? Because I really wish it, in our hearts, that this should not go through. And I can't believe that none of you up here don't believe that too. Okay, especially you, Ms. Chairman, where you live on Yellow Brick Road. Yellow Brick Road. There's also concern about idling. The DEP, okay, idling 3 minutes when the truck is not moving. Who's going to monitor that? Is there going to be a DEP police officer there? I doubt it. Okay? These trucks are going to start coming in before 7 o'clock because they're going to get ready to load up, and nobody's going to be there to monitor that, and we're going to have to sit and listen to that and the air pollution and the noise pollution that comes with it. Okay? I implore you to vote against this tonight, okay? Not only for us, but because you guys are also on the board, residents of Howell Township. Okay, this is your community just as much as it is ours. Okay, we pay a lot of money to live here, and we enjoy our community, and we don't want it to change. Thank you.
Yes, Bob Jumbo.
Tell the truth, help me God.
So help me God. 15 East Chatsworth. Giummo, Bob Jumbo. You guys deserve a lot of respect. You really do. You have to make hard decisions. And you have to do a lot of research too. Just like our board members and our committee members, all the research they have to do. But this is a prohibited plant. We want and we do respect you. We ask you respect us. This is a prohibited plant. There is no reason to build it. Okay? And like Rich just said, the traffic situation will be horrible. A traffic light will be a mess backing up to that. It will affect all of Howard. And those trucks will be sneaking down on our back roads and beating the heck out of our back roads. Places and roads with bus stops with kids and everything else. Please respect us, and we will respect you also. Thank you.
Yes. Adelaide Sam Georgie, 123 West Renaissance Boulevard, Farmingdale, New Jersey. L&L's proposed location is in an STZ zone. SED zones were supposed to be, quote, where highway infrastructure is readily available, unquote. Its proposed location is not anywhere near the highways. So it is not just Yellowbrook, Cranberry, Route 33, or Adelphia roads the trucks must drive through at least 5 miles through other residential areas, Pulaski and Marlboro roads, to reach Route 18 or West Farms and Georgia Tavern or Main Street in Farmingdale to reach I-195. This would be wrong because this is nowhere near highway infrastructure. Yellowbrook, Cranberry, and Equestria will be the first victims to fall, but this asphalt plant will not just impact those other communities or fine homes on those routes within 5 miles will struggle also. Even if only 20% of trucks drive through each street, it will still be more than 25,000 trucks every year on any street I just mentioned. Also, I want to point out, which should be very obvious to the board, that all the negative impacts that we previously were tested to, such as poor air quality, road congestion, and potential catastrophic health issues, It is also very certain that our property values will decrease. Along with this, I'm sure the board realizes that with a reduction in our property tax assessments will decrease. Along with this will be the resultant property taxes to the township. Along with many people here, we want to see this I forgot the word. I can't think of the word right now, but we want to see this proposal not to go through. Thank you.
I do. Rick Hankins, 24 East Milan Boulevard, Farmingdale, New Jersey. You know, I can't tell, but I don't believe that the applicant has put in any shred of evidence or any objective and professional report that shows how their intended use will improve the quality of life for residents of Howell Township. If the quality of life is not the definition of common good, I don't know what else should be. So I do not believe that this application brings any common good to the residents of Howell Township. In fact, I think the reason they haven't done that is because they can't do that. If you look at any dimension and you want to have any discussion about impact, it decreases the quality of life for residents of Howell Township. I can understand why the applicant wants to have this application approved. They think they're going to make a bundle of money. What I can't understand is why any person on this board would choose to approve it, knowing the consequence to the quality of life of your residents in Howell Township. So I'm going to add my voice to the choir to ask you to disapprove this in final form and to not let it go ahead. And I thank you for the time to comment.
I do. Stephen Scapatulo, 24 East Malta Drive in Farmingdale. So, how did things ever get this far? The fact is that the Howell Township Council has already banned all future plans from being built. Asking for a variance now is a simple way of getting around that. So why are we entertaining it? A variance is intended to add common sense to an existing law that will benefit a resident without impacting the quality of life of others. This is not the case here. This variance will impact hundreds of families and thousands of drivers every day. We, Howell Township, is under no obligation to say yes to approve this variance. So again, we ask, why are we entertaining it? Especially since the residents are so against it, as evidenced by our attendance here today and the petitions that were signed previously. Make no mistake about it, this is a quality of life issue, pure and simple. The only question is who should decide what our quality of life should look like. Common sense says building a plant will add smells that are not there now, add lighting that is not there now, noises that are not there now, and add a considerable amount of truckload traffic that is not there now. Common sense tells us that there will be a negative impact on the quality of life of residents and drivers in Howell. It's also been very disturbing that this public hearing has been filled with confusing statements and misinformation from various L&L experts and even the owner himself, from the hours of operation, the number of shifts, the number of silos, the number of trucks expected, and ignoring the wrap issue altogether. That is the asphalt, the old asphalt being pulled up. So why would we approve a variance that comes with a built-in problem, getting rid of that old asphalt? Certainly building a recycling plant isn't the answer if it's only going to take care of 10% of that asphalt. So a very difficult decision here is how do we approve something when we know there's a problem down the road? If we don't have a solution for that problem, then why would we go down that path? In addition, we know things change. The residents of Howell look to our leadership and to this board to keep promises and to do what is right. Common sense tells us that this variance should not be approved. That plant is now on the border of a much larger residential community than before, which is why the council previously banned the plant. Approving the variance now will be going against the law and what has already been decided upon, and will be at minimum a breach of trust and an egregious act to the homeowners in the area. This cannot be overlooked by the board or the council. Since residents don't have a vote, again, we look to you, our leaders, to do what is right for us. We are telling you, a plant in our backyard is not right, and changing the law to make it happen is also not right. We elected to live in Monmouth County, Howell Township, to avoid all the noise and congestion that so many other counties and towns have. Let's not have Howell lose its identity and become like them. Also, let's not be fooled about the traffic. It was stated that we need a traffic light. The fact is, a traffic light will only benefit L&L paving because it will help their trucks get onto 33. But for the residents and thousands of commuters and other drivers, it will simply slow them down, extending their trips, impacting their quality of life every day. Also, what is to happen when the L&L experts who painted such a rosy picture of this plant are wrong in their estimates? When they're wrong about the number of truckloads and the traffic, wrong about the noise, wrong about the smell, wrong about the drivers who will adhere to the rules and the laws of how to get in and how to get out. Gentlemen, there are no do-overs. The risk and reward is very high, and the reputation of this township, this board, the council, and the quality of life of its residents are at stake. Finally, L&L Asphalt should look to another site, one that is more appropriate. And if they are unsuccessful, that is not Howell Township's burden to bear. And we hope that this board and the town council can see that. Thank you.
I do. My name is Dr. Michael Monica, 40 West Da Vinci, Farmingdale. I have a background in traffic control. I was part of the design team that worked designing the flow of traffic in and out of the Garden State Arts Center back in the late 60s. So I know a little bit about traffic. My concerns are the traffic going out to 33, going north on Yellowbrook Road, going south on Yellowbrook Road to 524, and also along Cranberry Road. Cranberry Road has 3 bridges that these trucks have to cross. And if any traffic is held up going north on Yellowbrook Road or going south on Yellowbrook Road, they're going to have to take Cranberry Road. And we have a disaster if big accidents occur on 33 and 524. Thank you very much for your consideration. I do hope that you vote in favor of the residents of our community. Thank you very much.
Richard Bruger, 183 West Renaissance in Farmingdale. Richard Bruger, 183 West Renaissance in Farmingdale. I have no connection with Stavola nor L&L. I'm sure there are honest, hardworking people in both companies that are just trying to make a living. I'm simply a Howell resident, born in New Jersey, raised in New Jersey, loves this community. You have been entrusted by the community to protect and do what is in best interest of the Howell residents. In 2017, you did just that. The mayor and the council passed an ordinance prohibiting any more asphalt manufacturing plants in the township, and I thank you for that. The question that keeps nagging me is what changed? Just last month, you denied an application for a small-scale indoor concrete block manufacturing plant in the same area, and I thank you for that. The question that keeps nagging me is what changed? Something changed, and I don't know what it is. You have not told us. You have been entrusted to listen to the facts with an open mind. You have been entrusted to listen to the community with an open mind. Only you know if you have listened with an open mind. I hope you take a deep look inside yourself and do what is right. Thank you.
I do. Susan Ellswick, 12 West Da Vinci Way. When I moved here, I moved from Monmouth Beach, and I moved from Monmouth Beach because I was impacted by Hurricane Sandy. And little did I know that I was moving from the, something into the flames. I can't remember, from the fire into the flames. I picked a lot that has no one behind me. It's very tranquil, quiet. When I go down Cranberry Road, not Route 33, but Cranberry Road, I feel like I'm in the country. It's peaceful, it's tranquil. I never hear any night noise from truck traffic, although they claim that there's truck traffic. It's very quiet. Once in a while I will hear noise from the shooting range down the road. And I don't understand, since this was the zoning board disallowed this in 2000, not the zoning board, the town council disallowed this in 2017, why this variance is even being dragged out so long. I've been to meetings where there are things that come up about whether or not you're 10 or 15 foot over the setback, or whether the color of the building or the landscaping isn't correct. And these things are sometimes turned down. And this is so monumental, the impact that this is going to have on the health and the well-being, not just of the Equestria residents, which are nearby, but of the whole town. And also the perception of anyone from outside of the town of why they would want to move to Howell when you are putting commercial and industrial interests above the well-being of your town residents. And I appreciate your consideration for thinking of us and what you represent for this town and the well-being. Thank you.
Yes, I do. My name is Peter Corcoran. I'm 6 West Bonicelli Court, Farmingdale, New Jersey. The Girl Scout camp has been my pet peeve, okay, throughout this application. And finally, there was a expert who came up and gave testimony that the runoff, okay, will end up eventually, sometime in the future, into the Yellow Brook Stream. The Yellow Brook Stream then ends up in the Girl Scout pond, which they now fish out of, which means they'll end up with toxic fish. Hopefully they don't eat those fish. And then I looked at the map and said, where's that stream go beyond that? Well, it goes all the way down the Manasquan River. And so whatever toxic elements end up in that stream end up in the Manasquan River, which eventually goes into the ocean, which eventually ends up on our beaches. So this goes far past our own borders and what can occur from this. I think that needs to be considered. And as far as the Girl Scout camp is concerned, certainly this plant is built. My 2 granddaughters will never go to that camp. And I'm sure a lot of other people, once it's known, will not send their kids to that camp either. And also, there was also hypothetical, how many tons would be built by this plant, this asphalt plant? 200, 500, 750, a million? Well, to me, the only number that's not hypothetical is the $1 million capacity, million ton capacity that they're going to build. If they're going to do 200, which he says he's going to be able to do, meaning the owner, or 500, 750, hey, the only really number that's not hypothetical is the million that he's going to be able to produce when he's finished building this plant. Which means all traffic, air pollution, noise should be considered at that level. Not at the 200 that he's proposing that he's going to do when he first starts out. Also, as far as my feelings are, again, not to speak out against any particular person, all right, or any particular people, but anybody who lives on Yellow Brick Road, it would be hard-fetched for me to feel how they would vote for this, unless truly they're hoping that the whole road goes commercial someday and they'll be able to sell their property for more money. And number 3 or 4, depends what number I'm on to right now, I do also feel our planning person has been biased, okay, throughout this. back in December, when they're being the LL Asphalt planning person, said this is the greatest place for this plant to be. She, before even Stavoli had a chance to present his experts, said, I agree, this is a terrific place for this plant. I thought that was not appropriate for her to say at that given time. Thank you very much.
Yes, I do. Thomas Daney, B as in boy, A-E-H-N-Y, 11 Yellow Brook Road. I live about 500-600 foot off Route 33. I lived there for 60 years. When we built a home there with all farmland, 1 acre, 5, 10, 20, 30 acre farms. Now, it's a mess. Now 59 years later, we got 150 to 200 trucks a day going up and down the road, 24/7. If anyone thinks a blacktop business is an 8-hour-a-day job, well, you know the saying, I got a bridge outside. In nice weather, we can't sit outside on our deck and talk. There's so much noise with dump trucks and all kind of trucks, tractor trailers going up and down the road. We can't even enjoy our own property. Somebody mentioned the pipe factory. I've lived there so long, the pipe factory had maybe 3, 4 trucks going up and down the road per day. Big deal. When I say trucks, I mean tractor trailers, tankers, cement trucks, flatbeds, blacktop trucks, mostly dump trucks, 24/7. Remember, this is a residential section on a township road. Noise, pollution, safety. Greenway Enterprises, AKA L&L, ARE, Fabcor, Fabco, at one location. Now they even have the water company parking there. In my opinion, it's the wrong location for a business like that. It should be on a highway. Sometimes it takes 5 or 10 minutes, or maybe even more, just to enter Route 33. I would like our quality of life back. Don't we count? I've been there 60 years, and some of my neighbors have been there that long or longer. The problem is, the township did this. The residents did not do this. I, for one, expect the township to correct this problem. And here's just a little tidbit, a rebuttal. The second person you had speaking tonight was William Barr, a friend of mine. He's my neighbor. He said he sleeps like a baby at night. Well, of course he sleeps like a baby at night. He lives behind me about 500 or 600 foot in the woods. You don't hear nothing back there. I'm 50 foot off the road like a lot of my neighbors. I hear everything. We can't even sit down on a deck and talk. We have to yell, shout. We can't hear each other with all the trucks going by. Now, you had an attorney up here, I believe it was, for George Holmes Construction. He's no problem. George Holmes Construction leaves 90-95% of all his equipment out on the job site. You very seldom see one of his trucks going up and down the road. I say no to L&L. It's just the wrong location for that business. I'm not saying it's a bad business. It looks like it's a nicely run operation. It's just the wrong location. Thank you very much.
I do. David Schultz, 149 Yellowbrook Road, Farmingdale. Mr. Chairman, thank you for giving us an opportunity to speak tonight. I have attended nearly every single meeting before this board, the planning board, and the governing body regarding the applicant's use plans for this property. It has been a long haul, and I applaud the board's patience and attention to this application. I live on Yellowbrook Road with my wife and granddaughter. Granted, there is a lot of industrial uses on the road, along with truck traffic and occasionally noise inconveniences. However, it does not bother us. We have grown accustomed to it and actually enjoy it at times. We know where we live, and we knew the nature of the road before we moved to our residence. Yellowbrook Road has historically been an area of heavy industrial uses mixed with small farms and a few residences. Granted, the road may not be suitable for everyone, but it is just fine for me and my family. We enjoy every aspect of it except recent, neighboring, high-density housing built or planned. The L&L proposal brings a large, standing, decrepit industrial property into a productive and modern use. The applicants have made substantial improvements to the property already with their earlier planning board approval by making drainage and aesthetic improvements to the property, along with rehabilitating some of the buildings. The applicants have put forth a sincere effort to be neighborly by being cognizant to noise and traffic issues. The traffic issues do not stop at Route 33 and Yellowbrook Road. That intersection has been pointed out as being inadequate for as many years that I know of as I have lived on the road, probably longer. The other at-issue intersections are the Route 33-34 intersection in the area of the Secundus Waste Disposal Facility. Then the routes 33-34 circle. Both intersections are cumbersome for truck traffic to go north on Route 34 and onward to routes 18 and Route 9 south. Traveling on Cranberry Road is not preferred due to residences' proximity to the road frontage, along with its width and eventual exit at Asbury Road and the Route 33 and 34 intersection. Yellowbrook Road and Route 524 has drawbacks as well, being an acute angle intersection and being unsignalized. These deficiencies, however, are not attributable to the applicant, nor should the applicant be denied because of them. The problem is already there and has substantially been exacerbated by residential development and will become more acute by more residential development coming online in the area. My interest in land use issues on the road have existed since I moved to the road in about 2005. I have objected to some, supported some, and have been indifferent to some. On each and every one, I have spoken to my residential and some commercial neighbors regarding these issues. This one has been no different. I have spoken to every single residential neighbor I have from the southernmost point of L&L's property to Route 524 and partially beyond. Every neighbor from the southernmost point of L&L's property to Route 524 either support this application or do not object to it. Furthermore, from as far as I can tell, not a single commercial or industrial user of the road objects to the proposal, except one. Particularly, this is profound as I believe every industrial user on this road was given an opportunity to purchase this property prior to its purchase by the present owners, including the prominent objector to this application, which happens to be the landlord, Associated Company of the predominant producer of asphalt in this area. It is comforting for me and my neighbors to see this.
Listen, I gave Abe, this gentleman has been to almost every one of the meetings. Please, I let Abe speak because Abe has been there a long time. I let him go almost 9 minutes on that. Yes, I did. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to let him finish. He's almost done. Let's speed it up.
It is comforting for me and my neighbors to see this long-standing distressed industrial property renewed, modernized, and productive. My family and I, along with my neighbors, support this application and wish the owners success in their endeavor, as they certainly seem to be ambitious. We look forward to their continued growth, and we believe they will continue to be good neighbors, as well as an asset to the community. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
I do. It's Tom Hayes, 9 Yellowbrook Road. I guess I'm an F of the traffic study of being in the worst possible place for that road. So, Chairman Nansen, you and your panel have been tasked with a decision to grant L&L a land use variance application. I hope prior to the possibility of you favoring this application that this committee gives careful consideration to the grievances being aired by your community that's here to hear tonight. I, for one, am strongly opposed to this application on simple grounds that Yellowbrook Road was never set up for this industrial application. This can be seen by the multi-zoning uses that exist on this road today, with either end starting at residential, turn to agricultural, then to commercial, then industrial by the railroad tracks, and then turning back to the same way going out to 524. I believe that 50 years ago, when the pipe factory found home to this road, it was the railroad that was going to move their product out of the area, hence being the industrial zone by the railroad. Let's see. Commercial zoning by the corridor, which also runs the same way all the way to Freehold. That pattern from Yellowbrook Road, Fairfield Road, Howell Road, all the way to the town of Freehold runs that same way. It's residential on the 33 side and residential on the 524, and it's industrial on the track corridor. So there's some history there. Now you push the clock forward 50 years, once an agricultural road with chicken farms has blossomed to a multi-zone road, which has laid burden to a residential community at either end. So in closing, I've seen Howell Township give approval to many businesses on this road, which collectively have diminished the quality of life of the residents on each end. It is my wish that this panel adhere to the ordinances of Howell Township, along with the master plan, and reject the application of the state board until such time that Howell Township can commit to a true industrial park, which has access to all major arteries of the road, of roads that do not go through residential communities. And, I have a bunch of tidbits, but I think it's been hit. I could filibuster all night here, but I'm not going to. Thank you.
I do. Matthew Encarnacion, I'm at 2 Morello Court in Farmingdale. First of all, thank you to my community members for circulating that flyer, because I was unaware of any of this happening just down the street from my home until about 2 weeks ago when I received the flyer. So I appreciate the notification. I'm a father of 3 little boys who live just a mile from where you're proposing to build this, so it's extremely concerning to me for health concerns. I ask you all to just think back maybe 50 odd years ago, where smoking was somewhat normal throughout the community and health was not a major concern of it. Fast forward 50 years from then, you have these companies all being sued and put to the brink of going bankrupt, and each of their executives being held personally accountable for making such grossly negligent decisions as to put their community at risk to all the carcinogens they were being exposed to. You should now have a look at yourselves. You are now being tasked with the same choice. You are being personally held responsible. If you make the decision to put this forward, you can be held personally liable for the cases that come forward 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, to these children that grow up with cancer or things of the like that are going to be connected to this pollutant of a business that's put into your community. Are you willing to bankrupt your own personal families to have this go through today? Something for you to think about. Thank you.
Yes. Sandra Solly, Birdsall Road, Farmingdale. Thank you. All right, when anyone mentions taxes, it usually is about how high they are. They never say what they are willing to give up to lower the taxes. Most people want services, snow plowing, first aid, fire, police, etc. With the cost of health insurance, taxes will not go down. One reason for high taxes is that the tax base is supported by homes at 86.5%. Businesses contribute at 11.6%. The rest is supplied by empty land and farms. To get ratables, you have to welcome businesses to town. When I was on the zoning board in the early 80s, a Country Farms type store wanted to come in on Aldridge Road and Route 9. However, the nearby butcher didn't want competition, so he got supporters to speak against the store. The zoning board denied the application. The store appealed the decision and it was reversed. The store is still there, the butcher isn't. Another application on Aldridge was a daycare. The zoning board felt it was more appropriate for it to be on Route 9 because it was a business. They appealed it and it was reversed. The daycare is across the street from Aldridge School today. I live on a road with a gun club across the street. There is the airport approach, the racetrack and wall, and commuter parking. Driving it starts at 5:15 to 9:15 in the morning and returns at 3:15 p.m. to 7:15 p.m. I cannot stop these activities. It's a public road. Concerning L&L's activity, they came in 2 years ago and bought a former concrete business. It is zoned SED. The Girl Scout camp is nearby and expanded their services knowing the concrete businesses were there. Route 33 is a state highway. It is an east-west road across the state. This will not go away. People don't want certain facilities in their neighborhood, but where will schools, schools, firehouses, churches, hospitals go? L&L is only trying to expand their business, and an increase in traffic is not a valid reason to deny. Please support this application. Sure is.
Eileen Higgins, CEO of Girl Scouts, 232 Adelphia Road, Farmingdale. I have not been to all of these meetings. I am a geek. I watched them on the video, so I have heard quite a number of people defending the Girl Scouts through this process. I appreciate the concern that's been expressed for the Girl Scouts, but I do need to clarify some information regarding our concerns. The applicants have addressed a long-standing drainage issue in our camp that is not a result of their building and has been very supportive of Girl Scouts through this. So I just need to let me know that I need to clarify some of the information that has been shared due to concerns about Girl Scouts. Thank you.
I do. Alan Curry, 974 Route 33. K-U-R-R-E. I've had my business in Howell for over 15 years, and I am a taxpayer, and I'm in support of this application. The property we've been talking about has been manufacturing for decades, many decades before Equestria was even built. So the people really that purchased there knew what the area was about. So once again, I just want to say I'm in support. They've taken an old dilapidated piece of property, they fixed it up. They're looking to replenish 15 acres to green space, which is big improvement from what has been there. It's really been closed. It really looked horrible in the area for the last 10 years. And they've really, really made it much, much better. Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak? Let's get a vote.
Hi, I'm Joe Vasello from 18 West Campania. Yes, sir, I do. V as in Victor, A-S-S-A-L-L-O. Thank the board for allowing me to speak. I just want to put forth, I do have some expertise, as Dr. Monica did, in traffic control. I was lieutenant in charge of the traffic bureau in a small police department. I've done multiple traffic studies. So that being said, I can tweak any data as an expert to make it work. That's number one. Number two, a rhetorical question is, why would L&L do all the improvements prior to any sort of guarantee that they're going to get this variance done? Rhetorical question, again. Third, I don't have much more to say. The board can turn around. I speak for 300 people here. If you can look them in the eye and tell them you're making the right decision, I speak for them. Thank you.
Jody Carlucci, 139 Ford Road, Howell. I feel kind of like an idiot here. I don't go to many meetings, but I do know the situation. I don't live in Equestra. That's the main point I want to say. And I just want to be a voice for someone for the township, not for Equestra. I'm on the other side of Route 9 behind Walmart, so I'm far enough away from it, but I live in the township. I know there are many days when I'm outside, which is many days, and I can smell the effects of the Nestle plant in Freehold. And this is in Howell. So not only will I be smelling the effects of this plant, I will be receiving the toxicity. And of course, the Nestle plant is a much preferable. I'll accept coffee and chocolate any day. I just wanted to make my case. I don't live in Equestra, but I do live in the township. And as a man stated earlier this evening, I am concerned about the effects as a taxpayer on the infrastructure, the roads, the use, and how our taxes will go up to pay for all that infrastructure and repairs. Thank you.
Yes, I do. My name is Jerome Gorman, and I live at 19 Russet Lane in Farmingdale. And just for clarity, that's Farmingdale proper. I don't have a Farmingdale mailing address. I live actually in the town of Farmingdale. I'm a former school board vice president, and I'm very active in the town of Farmingdale. It's very nice to meet everyone here. It's very nice to meet you also. I have no dog in this fight, but what I will tell you is that over the last 9 or 10 months, I have noticed substantial, aggressive truck traffic through the town of Farmingdale. Okay, and I'm here again. I don't have any dog in the fight, but you have to understand, we have no busing in Farmingdale for our students. We're not like Hal. Our students have to walk to school or get driven by their parents or one of their loved ones. When those trucks speed down the street, and they did, just like the one today, the dump truck with the backhoe trailer on it that almost slammed into the back of my Jeep in front of the front end shop because you were going too fast to see my directional. That's a perfect example of what I'm not worried about for me, but for our students. And not today, not tomorrow, but forever. In Farmingdale, those students deserve to have their safety protected by entities like this. And whether or not you vote yes or no is of no value to me at all. But as a business owner, I'm asking you, please tell your trucks to slow down, because this will become an issue in Farmingdale that I will address with our borough and our council. Thank you.
Does anybody else have a comment from forward? Seeing none, take a motion to close public. Okay, at this time, the board is going to take a 10-minute break.
I want to address the attorneys, Mr. Chairman. All right, in addition to that, Mr. Doyle, you'll be ready to sign. I'm sorry. Let me start again. I asked Mr. Doyle if he would be ready to engage in his closing argument. He said he would, and that'll be
After the 10-minute break that I need.
I have got my eye on you, Mr. Doyle. And Mr. Butler, you're also ready to sum up?
Yes, after
Okay,
Mr.
so
Doyle.
we'll have summations after that, and then the board will be second.
Zoning board will now reconvene. I ask everyone to please take their seats. Thank you.
Mr. Tropoli.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. If I can have everyone's attention as you move towards the bleachers and into your seats. The public portion of the proceeding has been closed. Moving into summations now. Mr. Doyle will go first, followed by Mr. Butler. Just for the purposes of the record, and I think the council and speakers will agree with me, please refrain from clapping or calling out or doing anything of that sort during the summations. I wish to remind everyone, this is the quasi-legal proceeding. And these summations are as valuable as anything in a jury trial or anything else. So please do not clap, do not applaud. If you agree or disagree, give these gentlemen the respect that they deserve as well. So I'd ask that you keep those comments in mind. With that, Mr. Doyle, are you ready to proceed?
I am.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, members, board professionals, Mr. Butler, and the citizens who are involved and interested in this matter. While it might be important, as Ron said, to give the summation, on the other hand, it is neither fact nor law. I haven't been sworn in. It's not evidence. So not being evidence, I don't expect to be objected to, and nor do I expect to object to Mr. Butler, though we might well disagree with each other, I'm sure. Similarly, Mr. Chairman, and most respectfully, I hope I have heard, you're going to have to move along, Mr. Doyle, for the last time. Not tonight. We all know that we're out of here maybe earlier than we expected. So if I go on a little bit, this has been an important case, a significant one, and let me speak to this. Thank you, sir. Before we get to the facts and the law, let me say some things that are not facts. This case has an applicant, L&L, but it's not about the nature, the quality, the gentlemen, the brothers who own L&L. It's about their application and the land use impact of it. It's not about my client, Stavola, or Stavola Leasing versus L&L, or the little guy versus the big guy, or their business issues, what they won't do or will do. That's all, frankly, soap opera. It's all about land use. But I was interested to hear even a supporter of the L&L application talk about the former concrete plant. And that's exactly what it was, former. In this application, the applicant has sought, it seems to me, to have it both ways. You hear former, you hear how terrible it was, how run down it was, and I don't think there's any question in citizens' minds that they've cleaned it up. Though I have heard that one of the reasons they should be granted the variance is what a great job they did. That is not a reason at all. It was their civic duty to clean up that site. They moved beyond that and got an approval for a permitted use, at which time Mr. Radelli, as found in the facts by the board, said they weren't going to use that manufacturing building again. So to say all of that, and then on the other hand, say, well, they have a right somehow to keep a use that they have more or less given up, doesn't seem to me to make sense. What this application is about is the overwhelming burden this applicant has to get a use variance. They made it clear they weren't looking for a D2 variance to improve an existing non-conforming use because it truly wasn't existing or operating. In fact, their own expert said it hasn't operated since December 14. Excuse me, December of 2014. So, with all of that said, And even if it wasn't for Stavola objecting, what I heard in the audience tonight, what I've seen at the meetings, which you've listened to, indicates that clearly there are significant objections and objectors who would have had to have been heard. We just were able to match expert for expert what was presented. Now, let me talk about what the facts are as opposed to those non-facts. First of all, you start with the zone. This is the SED zone, and there's been a lot of talk about the nature of the zone and where it was 50 years ago. Growing up in Herbertsville, I knew it was rural then, and I know that it's rural now. It was a 22-foot paved road that seemed appropriate for the somewhat far away commercial buildings, far away from residential. It's still a 22-foot road. But I can tell you, it's changed a lot in 50 years. But look at the zone. By the numbers, there are 24 parcels in that zone. 5 of them taking up 11% of the acreage in that zone are vacant. So by definition, they have a permitted use. Those 5 vacant properties, one of them owned by a Stavola entity, will be burdened by this new use if granted because of its nature and because it is prohibited and because of its size. Regardless of how modern it is, it still has a lot of trucks. It still will give off noise. It still will give off odors. It still will be prohibited. Those 5 vacant lots will be burdened. There are 10 parcels covering more than half, 57% of the land, that have permitted uses, including L&L. And if those permitted uses are the bulk of the zone, then they have a right, respectfully, to suggest that every other use should be permitted. Every new use, and this is a new use, should be a permitted use. Doesn't mean, Mr. Chairman, as you asked, can't they apply for a variance? Of course they can. But there's no obligation to say yes. You have an obligation to hear and listen, but not to say yes. There are 5 single-family residential properties in the zone. Interestingly, that's not a permitted use, but they will suffer the consequences. There are only 3 pre-existing non-conforming uses. I have a feeling those were the 3 that were mentioned in the planning board hearing by Mr. Nicastro, and the number 3 that was so relied on by Ms. Cafone in her testimony. So the overwhelming number of lots are either conforming, residential, or vacant that will be negatively impacted. Now, L&L's property, because of its significance in the zone, will have even an outsized negative impact. It is the 3rd largest parcel in the site, in the zone. It has the most frontage on that 22-foot road. And as was said by the planner on October 22nd, page 46, it's really the heart of the zone. So what you're saying, the heart of the zone, the very core of what this zone is, right in the middle on the only major road, except a portion of Cranberry, that the governing body, with the recommendation of a unanimous planning board, said should not allow, prohibit this kind of use. As somebody in the audience said before and testified, a do-over. So when you look at those numbers, those facts, beyond dispute, and have to make a judgment, will this do substantial detriment to the zone plan and the zoning ordinance and the public good? I say yes, 3 for 3. The zone is up for grabs, and the council said it shouldn't be. You, if you approve this, in effect, reverse the bosses of land use. That is the governing body. Now, there's been much testimony about how big is this. Well, we can measure some things about how big it is. We know the silos at 90.7 feet, 6 of them approved, if approved, twice the height limit. That's big. We know that the asphalt plant is big. We know that the consequences are big. But all of that flows from that single word that I've heard mentioned throughout the hearings, capacity. What's the capacity? I heard a couple of people testify tonight. Any number is speculative. As I said to the chairman once in a colloquy, there's only 2 numbers that aren't specific. 0 if it doesn't get approved, and 100% can be used if it is. There is no in-between number. Those are the only finite numbers. But more than that, I'd ask you to turn to, I meant to time how long you had to listen to me. Now I have an idea. Listen to Mr. Riddell in his own words. July 9, 2017, page 59. I honestly don't know how much material we're going to sell. Listen to his testimony on December 10, 17, when the public asked questions, and in answer to one, he said, my brother and I sat around and we took a guess at the number. Mr. Chasanoff asked, did you look at, did you shop, or did you find the catalog or find something that would handle your capacity of 200,000? Mr. Ridelli, no. Mr. Chasanoff, did you learn what the capacity of this plant was before you purchased it? Mr. Ridelli, yes. But this is the one that you're planning to purchase? Yes. Mr. Chasanoff, how did you come to that conclusion that this would be the plant to use? Now, inferring that question, if you're saying 200,000 and you knew the capacity was more than 1 million, why did you buy something more than 5 times what you said was your, quote, business plan? His answer is pricelessly important. We felt it was the right size, production-wise, for us. So what he's telling you is, whatever the number is, I'm going to run a business. That's the American way. Why shouldn't you? If it's the right site, which it isn't. So those are the records that say, and you're going to have a hard job. I don't see you putting on an enforceable condition about how much he's going to use. There might be meters on some things, but not on asphalt production. So even his own experts, and I quote from the March 2nd, 2017 report of Mr. Dean that was admitted into evidence. The site operation, particularly the conveyance of finished material to trucks for shipping, has a finite capacity due to the physical limitations of the silos and the processing equipment. Now we know what those limits are. 400 gallons, an hour, 6 silos, 300 silo, 400 an hour could do 1,800 into the 300 capacity silos. So we know those numbers, and we know if you do those numbers by what Mr. Ridelli acknowledged was the number of days in a asphalt producing season, rain and cold weather site, 240. He had to be coaxed by Jack Mallon to be honest about and accurate about the fact that he did want nighttime business. And we went from 8 to 5 to 7 to 7 to 7 to 10. I mean, if you multiply 400 an hour times 15 hours times 240 days, you get over 1.5 million. Now that's unreasonable. I appreciate that. But it isn't too unreasonable to say it's going to be several 100,000 approaching 1 million. You remember the number as to why 700,000 is the market in Monmouth County. There's some people who corner the market. And if it's 700,000, that means every number you heard about based on 200, including trucks, is wrong by 3.5 times. To continue with Mr. Dean's quote, the end user demand will dictate the level of regular traffic activity associated with the operation. But then hear what he said. However, as the applicant is the principal end user of the product with fairly low projections, a better determination of additional traffic can be developed based upon the equipment processing capability. In other words, he told this board that the applicant was going to say the 200,000, and he gave that number. But the better determination would be based upon the equipment processing capacity. So 200 is as speculative as any other number, but one number that isn't speculative is what the applicant's expert said, the production capacity. And when you do that, the numbers that come out, the thousands and thousands of trucks that you heard tonight from a number of concerned citizens could well be accurate. Now, another fact that came out sort of slowly, but I think it made an impact, and if it didn't, it should. Asphalt is produced in somewhat growing percentages from 0 now up to as much as 30% on public jobs by recycling asphaltic product, RAP. Listen to what one expert said about RAP. We're facing a huge recycling issue with asphalt milling. It's piled everywhere. Now you might think I'm quoting Mr. Thompson, a 40-year expert in this business, whose testimony was nevertheless challenged by the cross-examination of board members, as well as Mr. Butler. Well, it wasn't his quote, though he said some words very similar. That's what Mr. Kennedy said. So what are they doing about this problem that the applicant's own engineer acknowledged? Not much. They got a 30-foot high bin that by the percentages of what they could put down, how much RAP they've got to take back off of the roadways, and where they have to pile it, could have 5 acres of land uncovered, unshielded, of RAP within 1 to 2 years, not shown on the plan. RAP that lays out there as the wind can blow it, the water soaks on it, and it pollutes the ground. All of that, they say, well, we can take care of that, we'll do this and we'll do that. It can't be just taken care of. The other questions that you've heard, noise. Mr. Dottie's a governor appointee by governors of both parties, significant expert across the country in this particular state, testified about all the things the noise expert for the applicant missed, the combination of noises, the trucks as well as the manufacturing equipment, the effect on the highway. I would kid the chairman who said he woke up the Harms trucks, or maybe it was the Harms trucks that woke him up at 4 o'clock. The truck traffic, you better get ready to be woken up at 10, 12, and 2. Those are all things that are on the record that are factual. Now, what the applicant has said, well, I can fix those things. How is he going to fix them? He's going to tell the truck drivers they can't use Cranberry. They have to use Yellowbrook. I like Mr. Beanie, who I haven't met, who testified. I read his words in the transcript, as I've read every other word in every transcript. And he said, in effect, they're telling the people on Yellowbrook Road to go to hell. I don't think they're doing that. But it's a fork in the road. Those trucks are going to be terrible. They're going to be numerous, and they're going to be noisy, and they're unnecessary. But if this is approved and they're there, they've got to go down one of those 2 roads. So you could tell them which road to go down, to make the people on the other road unhappy. But somehow you're going to wind up with half the people unhappy all of the time, or half the people unhappy half of the time, or all of the people unhappy half the time. So those are the things you're facing. Odor. Mr. Ridelli's testimony. You know, somebody told me that was a problem, and it is, but after 2 years you get used to it. Now that sounds humorous, but when you think about how serious that is. Now, when have you heard about the strobe lights that are going to make sure that the backup alarms don't register with nearby people? And he said, well, we'll put those on. Have you ever done it before? No. Which is appropriate because when asked during the December 10th public questioning meeting, does anybody in your company have any experience in this business? No. Does anybody in this company have experience meeting OSHA requirements? No. And then when the president of one of the largest companies, who's done it 35 years and been president of the association and awarded with their Merit of Honor, gets questioned, I'd ask you respectfully, make the comparison between experience and expertise, and I'm going to take a flyer. You have a decision to make. Now, if you say yes, then all of the Band-Aids that have to be put on the noise problem, on the odor problem, on the traffic problem, on the intersection problem, I enjoyed hearing a supporter say, well, it's bad now, and if the time would go to fix it, we would before that. Well, if it's bad now, why make it any worse? So all of those Band-Aids, will they work? I don't think they'll work 100%. There's the old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. The prevention is to say no. Just say no. Then you don't have to worry about whether the recalcitrant truck driver doesn't care about what you told him because he's got to make a buck at 1 o'clock in the morning. And he's going to go down whatever road he damn well pleases. He's going to water his back of his trucks wherever he pleases. No amount of Band-Aids are going to fix the problem. That's the factual side. Let me talk about the law. You gentlemen have, and I don't mean to discount the lady professionals, but the board right now is all gentlemen, have lived with this case, thankfully, for longer than I have. I came in mid-course as a pensioner, as you well know. But you've seen various reiterations of this. But the simple, essential fact here is that the use of manufacturing asphalt was prohibited unanimously by the governing body in July 17th. Mr. Butler was at that meeting, as somebody mentioned. The applicant didn't choose to appeal that zoning ordinance. They didn't choose to appeal your interpretation. They had to come here, but now they come here. Several months applied for after the ordinance said, you shall not do this. It must be noted what the governing body did. You have permitted uses, you have conditionally permitted uses, and you have uses which aren't on the permitted list, and generally an ordinance clause that says any use not specifically prohibited, not permitted, permitted is not permitted. Let me say that again, any use not on the permitted list is not permitted. In rare occasions, as in this one, town may specifically say, so as to take any question out of it, prohibit. Now, interestingly, there's only 3 uses in this zone that are actually prohibited. Sex shops, tattoo parlors, and asphalt and concrete manufacturing. It's always nice to know who you're with. So that's where this use is. Not with, that's how negatively and badly the governing body thinks about it. So you have to think about that. Now, there's been a thread running through this application that somehow There's little or no difference in fact or in law between asphalt manufacturing and concrete manufacturing. And then there's a second thread running through. It says, well, they used to manufacture concrete, so if asphalt and concrete aren't too much different, and they did manufacture concrete, well, then they can manufacture asphalt, notwithstanding the ordinance. That's wrong on every count. Fact, law, and either of those threads. Let's be clear. As was testified and as you can of your personal knowledge know, asphalt and concrete manufacturing are two different animals. Asphalt is manufactured day and night. In this site, it would be manufactured till 10 o'clock at night, and the trucks would move thereafter, particularly given the likelihood of public contracts. Much of that manufacturing and the negative effects of it will take place in the evening, producing the most significant negative consequences to its neighbors. Concrete manufacturing, and the concrete manufacturing that took place here, and we had several witnesses who testified of their personal knowledge about that operation, including Mr. Thompson, who delivered to that site, Mr. Hussein, who went past that site every day as he worked at D.W. Smith, Mrs. Fagan, the same. They only operated in the daytime, and they didn't have 6 silos, 90 feet high. Concrete uses water as a binder. Asphalt uses oil, which produces odor and pollution. Concrete is manufactured solely in the barrel trucks that we're all familiar as we see them spinning down the road. Asphalt is manufactured in a highly visible outside facility. That's without getting to the 6 silo. This is a complete departure from what was on the site previously, the former site, and the former operation. Concrete manufacturing in general, and previously on this site, is an indoor operation, unlike the proposal here. The past operator truly didn't manufacture concrete to put it down on the road or elsewhere. He manufactured concrete products. So it was a daytime, limited truck operation. So to suggest that there's a continuum between what was there, stopped totally in December 14th, now 5 years later, should be able to have a totally new manufacturing operation is just factual and legal nonsense. The Township of Howell drew no distinction between these very two. They didn't say you can have concrete but can't have asphalt. They said you can't have either one. So whatever case in Farway Patconk says, and that is not the law for Howell and what's good for Howell, that case dealt with, and if anybody gave a different opinion, I'd beg to differ, and I'd like to hear about it. In that case, the ordinance allowed both of them, and whatever a judge might have said in an unreported case in the trial level, that they're not different, just isn't factually true as to this site, this town, and this ordinance. There can be no argument about what was intended by the ordinance. I heard Mrs. Cafone. I used her as a witness. Excellent planning. I'm very, in fact, surprised by some of the testimony she gave. In May 18, 2017, the Planning Board adopted the revised land use plan element of master plan and the re-examination report by Planning Board, both authored by Ms. Bean, your planner. Both of them, word for word, said in paragraphs 14, manufacturing should be removed as a permitted use in the SED zone. Township Council on June 13th introduced an ordinance that specifically prohibited what is sought by this application. The Planning Board found that ordinance to be consistent. Now, what happened at the governing body level is interesting because they said other forms of evidently, in their mind, lesser concerning manufactured uses were permitted, but they singled out specifically asphalt and concrete manufacturing less than 2 years ago as never to happen. prohibited. Now, how do you then turn that around and say, well, they said that, but there's more to it than that? Well, the applicant has to prove a few things. They got to prove the positive criteria, meaning that somehow, despite the fact that use was prohibited, it somehow advances the purposes of zoning. And there was testimony from Ms. Gaffone that there were three purposes, G, H, and N, that it would support. Ms. Beam said that maybe M doesn't apply, but the other two purposes cited, which were providing specific, sufficient space for a variety of uses to meet the needs of all New Jersey citizens and encouraging the more efficient use of the land, to me, that language is very general. And to specifically apply it to this site takes a real push. This proposal does not meet, as the first standard says, the needs of all New Jersey citizens. All it does is advance the business interests of a single landowner who already has an absolutely permitted site and an absolutely permitted business on that site. It's somehow difficult for me, and I would hope you, to think that 6 silos 90 feet high, an asphalt manufacturing plant, piles of wrap of dimensions we can only guess at, is something to be encouraged because it's, quote, more efficient. The positive criteria were not met in this case. The legal consequences of the undeniable facts concerning the total prohibition of the use are abundantly clear, and they cannot be subject to any clarification or misreading. The applicant's planner well knew that and laid out the standards for proving negative criteria, as I'm sure Mr. Tropoli would do with you, but let me take the words of Ms. Gaffone, which are accurate. As a non-inherently beneficial use, we have to demonstrate to the board the Medici enhanced reconciliation. Critical word here, reconciliation, and the other key word is usurpation. That even though the governing body doesn't allow for this use in the zone, they're still not going to have a substantial detriment. Now, there was a 2017 ordinance that actually took this use out of the permitted use, so certainly from a reconciliation point, there's something that we need to address. So in addition to the positive criteria and the reconciliation, we have to testify to, I have to testify to the negative criteria. She went on to say that they met it. How did they meet it? She said they met the standard because she looked deeply into the transcript of the planning board minutes and read it carefully, and that the facts therein led her to the belief that somehow, despite the ordinance, this was really the grand plan. But let me explain it to her, to you, in her own words, taken from the February 4th, 2019 transcript, pages 21, lines 15. It was specifically recognized by that board that there were 3 concrete plants in town, and that was in 2017. Not true. Deputy Mayor DeCastro happened to mention, what is there, I guess 3 plants out there? We don't need any more. That was the testimony. She says, on page 41, line 6 to 8, the 3 plants you're speaking of, my question to her, are the one that is on your client's property, correct? That's one of the 3. Answer, yes. No, in fact, it wasn't. When I got a little bit tied up and referred to the curb plan, the chairman corrected me and said the curb plan is in fact the L&L site. He then went on to say, page 68, the 3 plants are, and mentioned Anchor Concrete, Northeastern, as he called it, Eastern Concrete, and the Stavola plant. The other testimony was that those were the 3 plants that existed and were operating when the ordinance was adopted. Now I know that there was some comment on it, and I'll get to that in a second. Page 47, line 25 to page 48, line 4. So in my opinion, having read those meeting minutes, and have you know, read them very carefully and understanding that the town recognized 3 were existing and the dialogue was adding about more. Yeah, that's exactly right. The 3 were enough, and the 3 were those 3. And this one is more than enough. It's the 4th. But this being said, if I told Mr. DeCastro to say 6, he probably would have said 6. It was a guess. That's not accurate. First of all, that's her as a fact witness, and I should be able to cross-examine on that, but I don't think it's a right that I'll be given. Page 72, line 6 to 10. The planning board meeting minutes was very specific to the existence of 3 concrete and asphalt plants, and they were not speaking to any of the other sites. That's not accurate. They never mentioned what the 3 were. Mr. Nicastro didn't say it. No board member said it. It wasn't in the report. It wasn't in the findings. It wasn't in the resolution. Page 73, lines 5 through 9. Again, I think the board can look at the totality of the evidence that I've presented for particular suitability. And that's important, however. I think the board can look at the master plan findings where it was acknowledged that 3 exist. Particular suitability is what she rested her whole case on, and the reconciliation of this none allowed prohibited use with what the council did. The board did not make any master plan findings other than to adopt what Jennifer had written, no more manufacturing, period, end of story. Page 75, lines 8 through 10. The main difference is that there were not one of the 3 plants that were identified in the master plan minutes of the planning board minutes. That was an answer to my question, which said, well, if the site and the area are generally industrial, why couldn't Harms ask to manufacture asphalt? And her answer was because they weren't one of the 3. Why not Anchor switch from concrete to asphalt? She said because they weren't one of the 3. Hers happened to be one of the 3, except for one fact. It wasn't, it isn't, and it doesn't have any special right. So she said, well, what I looked at for reconciliation was the character of the area. I think the meeting minutes speak directly to the reconciliation. If they don't speak to the reconciliation, then there is no reconciliation. And if you don't reconcile a positive vote by this board and can't with the fact that a year plus ago they said no more, then there's no legal right to grant them. And if this board doesn't recognize it, the courts will. And let me be specific about that. I don't say that as a threat. I don't say that to be harsh. I just say that's a legal fact. Your counsel should look at Saddlebrook Realty versus the Board of Adjustment, cited 388 New Jersey Super, page 67, more particularly pages 75 and following pages. They published the Appellate Division opinion wherein 3 fast food restaurants were allowed in Saddlebrook when they were permitted uses. The use was changed. All others were thereafter prohibited. It's a coincidence that it's 3. And Dunkin' Donuts came in and said, we're in commercial shopping center. We're not much different than those 3. And the planning board said, you should be approved. It is a general commercial area. Same thing you heard in this site. The Appellate Division, first of all, laid out the ground rules for you and all of us in land use. It is well established that variances to allow new, non-conforming uses, which this is, should be granted only sparingly and with great caution, since they tend to impair sound zoning. They might as well have been speaking to this application. A reviewing court gives less deference to a grant than to a denial. In other words, you will have a bigger burden to deny granting this than you would have had in a situation where reversed and you denied it, and Mr. Butler was taking the appeal rather than me. A court must consider whether a Board of Adjustment, in the guise of a variance proceeding, has usurped the legislative power reserved to the governing body of the municipality to amend or revise the plan. So, the appellate division threw out the opinion and concluded the board's grant of a use variance for a fast food restaurant in the face of the governing body's express prohibition of this use constituted a usurpation of the legislative power reserved to the governing body. They found that special reasons were not shown, and the fact that it was in a commercial zone was not enough. I won't bore you with too much more law, except to say that it's all the same. One last case, North Brunswick versus the Zoning Board of Adjustment of the Township of North Brunswick. Same situation. Specifically prohibited a denser residential use. Applicant comes in a year later and says, but it's not a bad thing after all. It'll be a good rateable, it'll be nice, I'll take good care of it, people need housing, all of that. That board denied it. Appeal taken. Listen to what the court said and what they're saying to you in this case, I think. The ordinance amendment history is particularly damning in that the property has been rezoned by the township approximately 1 year before the board voted to grant the requested use application. The board ignored the fact that the property had relatively recently been rezoned to preclude such usage. The board's action thus blatantly rejected the township zoning plan and improperly arrogated to itself the power to substitute its idea of an appropriate zone plan. Those two appellate division cases both came after Medici. They both spoke to how you find reconciliation under Medici. They both said you can't reconcile merely on general area, betterment of the community, vague standards. The ordinance speaks for itself, and you said it should be reversed, and you can't do that. These are two cases from the second highest court in our state, and ones that are still good and clear law. For this board to grant variance relief, they will have to ignore a clear legislative intent of their own governing body and fail to follow the clear precedents. And I mention the word precedents because one cannot help but hear the citizens who said if a month ago this ordinance stood up and you stood up for it, how is this use with more trucks, more noise, oil, different? I read the resolution. I read the entire transcript. And I suggested to me that somehow a road could be tried to hone down the idea that, well, it's new. This isn't quite new. This is absolutely new, this application. Whatever was there isn't there anymore. Whatever is concrete is not asphalt. Whatever is old is not the new thing they want. If you choose to approve them, I think, as strange as this might sound, you will do a disservice to the applicant. This applicant has already spent enough money, effort, and time to see that glimmer of hope that you would give him by an improper, illegal, losing case to be whisked out by the appellate courts. For all those legal and factual reasons, I think the facts have been proven. The facts that I gave you were mostly out of the defendant's own mouth and his experts. The law I gave you is undeniable. The facts that the planner's testimony was not consistent with the record speaks for itself. Mr. Chairman, just for a couple of minutes, if I may more, and I thank you for your patience and Mr. Butler and the audiences. I couldn't help but consider one citizen who said that, and there were more than one, who said they've been to most of these hearings, if not all of them, and they felt that there was somehow unequal treatment. And they said some other, to me, rough things. I think that the comments that were made about you, sir, personally, and deprecatory reasons of where you might be or might not be, were ill-chosen, improper, and should not have been said. I have seen you operate firsthand. I haven't been before this board since you were on it 19 years ago. Mr. Tropley was the attorney then, and he was younger, and so was I. So I, not by way of reproach of those people, I think you are going to call them as you see it. I don't think the facts and the law are around to call it anyway, but how I said it. But I didn't think those were proper attacks upon you personally. It is interesting, you live on Yellowbrook Road, you know the facts as well as anybody, and if you were to vote for it, as somebody said, he talked to every neighbor along the road and they were all for it, and then two people got up who lives on Yellowbrook Road and said they were against it. He must have missed them. But the thing that I also wanted to say on a personal basis, and I say this because I'll probably never be before this board again, other than in court in terms of an appeal of whichever way it goes. I've done land use all my life, 50 years as an attorney. I've probably done thousands of cases, and less than a handful have I been an objector. This one I had the choice not to take. I read the record, and I thought it would have been a relatively easy case for an old guy like me to get involved in, given the fact the ordinance was adopted a year ago. And having read the transcript, there's nothing to shake it, what was done. More than that, as an assemblyman in 1976, I was the prime sponsor of the municipal land use law. So it's in my heart and my bones, so you'll understand why I say a couple of closing things that I wanted to say. With respect to the treatment, and I thought I heard, you need to move along a lot more than Mr. Butler got asked that. I did think that some of my witnesses got cross-examined a little more sharply than did Mr. Butler's witnesses. That happens. I mean, I've been in the game. I understand it. I get a little bit disappointed when you find out that there was an engineer's report that was submitted and you didn't get to see it. And when you got to see it on April the 1st, it got a review on April the 1st. So when people hear those kinds of comments, some of the comments you heard tonight about being one-sided, I think they were a little strong, but I can understand how they come with them. When my friend for 30 years tells my expert, I listened to you 3.5 hours, now you're going to have to be quiet and listen to me. I think that might have been a little worse still, though. Respectfully, again, there's two sides to the case usually. You make that judgment at the end. You don't make it after one side is testified without the expert from the other side. I think that doesn't make a good record for you. It doesn't succeed the talent I know the corner has. All in all, aside from those personal observations, you can't change that the council adopted the ordinance. And you can't graft onto that ordinance things that weren't said at the planning board meeting that Ms. Capone suggests were said. You can't graft on the numbers in that zone. You can't change the clear words on the page. Asphalt manufacturing, concrete manufacturing are prohibited uses. You stood up for that ordinance a month ago. You should stand up for it tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm not going to be long, and I'm not going to threaten this board with an appeal. I'm not going to threaten my co-counsel with an appeal. We've been together regarding this property in one way or the other for the better part of a year, maybe a little bit longer than a year. And I think you've all figured out I'm not overly verbose. I get to the point and I try to be efficient with my time. But before I go any further, I do want to thank all of you. I know this sounds cheesy, but I want to thank you, and my client wants to thank you for your patience and attentiveness. This has been a long process to get to this point, and your questions to both myself and to the objectors and to the public were intelligent and helped us get to this conclusion. And I want to thank the board's professionals who also asked probing questions and fair questions of both sides. And I know that they're not here, but I want to thank Mr. Armada and Mr. Posh for their time when they sat on this application. I'm a sucker for a good story. Stories are important. What's the story here? What are the facts? L&L Paving, Larry and Lance, they're local men who built this company through hard work and being good people. They didn't have 2 pennies to rub together when they started this business. They literally walked down the street and asked homeowners if they could pave their driveways. They worked hard. They made a dime, they saved a nickel, and they built a successful business. Slowly, L&L Paving, through Larry and Lance's hard work, they bought a property in Tinton Falls. They never thought they'd leave that property. Through their efforts, L&L grew. They outgrew their facility in Tinton Falls, and they started to look for a new home. They found it here in Howell. They found 89 Yellow Brook Road. This is a perfect site for them and their business. It's a large site, 35 acres. It was cleared. It already had an industrial use on it, one that made concrete, and it was surrounded by other industrial uses historically, and it was in the SED industrial zone. The property needed a little TLC. I think I started off these hearings almost a year ago saying that this property is a diamond in the rough, and I meant it then, I still do mean it. And even though it needed a little TLC, Larry and Lance knew that if they worked hard, they could get the property in good working order and good things would come. And then they decided to take a leap and become a producer of asphalt. And they ran into a company named Stavola. Stavola is the only producer of asphalt in Monmouth County, and it refuses, as you heard my client say, and as you heard a member of the public say today, refuses to sell to my client. And especially if they refuse to sell to my client when they learned about this application. A company named Stavola hired an attorney to oppose this application. It was before the planning board, to file an interpretation before this board. And now, Mr. Doyle is now the second attorney to object to this application. What did Larry and Lance do? Larry and Lance turned the other cheek. They continued to work hard, believing that good things will come. And here we are today. As I said earlier, this property, it's a diamond in the rough. And I really didn't mean it. I meant it way back when. Larry and Lance are going to take a 35-acre industrial site, landscape 13 acres of that with grass and trees. The result is going to be a continuing industrial use on a property in the heart of the SED zone in this area, because you have to remember there are more than one SED zone in the township of Howell. Mr. Doyle focuses all his attention on this one SED zone. There are more than one SED zones in Howell Township. But in this SED zone, what they're going to create is a continuing industrial use on a 35-acre piece of property that's going to wind up being like a park. It will beautify this property, as you heard testimony to tonight from members of this public. This site will be beautiful. It will have trees on it. It will have grass on it. It will have birds. It's in the middle of the SED zone, and it will be a beautiful piece of property when they are done with it. And it will significantly help with the runoff in the area. 13 acres of property is going from impervious coverage to pervious coverage. Runoff in that area is going to be significantly helped. As you're aware, we're here because L&L Paving needs a use variance for the proposed asphalt facility, a height variance for the proposed silos for the property, and other associated variances and waivers. I have said this before, I'm going to say it again. This is the perfect site for this use. It is particularly suitable for this use. It is a 35-acre site. It is mostly cleared in an established historic industrial neighborhood. There's another asphalt facility across the street owned by a company named Stavola in the middle of one of your SED zones. It had an existing concrete manufacturing facility on it, and I know that there's been some splitting of hairs here. I know that some people were saying, well, it was a concrete product. I heard Mr. Doyle say before, all the concrete manufacturing was done inside. That's not true. The manufacturing was done outside too. But the facts remain, there was a concrete manufacturing facility on that property. It created concrete, it poured it into molds, whether it did it, sometimes it did that outside, sometimes it did that inside, but it was there on the property. The site has ready access to both highway and rail infrastructure. That meets the purpose of the SED zone, and it's something that you should think about. Mr. Doyle's planning expert harped on the fact that it didn't have direct access to the highway. Well, that's not what the purpose of the SED zone is. It's ready access to highways and rail infrastructure. There is ready access here. And I have to remind you, there is rail access along the back of that property. The rail line is not in use at the moment, but that rail is there. There is access to that rail, so it meets the purposes of the SED zone. This is the perfect site. As you heard our expert planner say, Ms. Cofone, this is particularly suited for this use. And as you heard Ms. Cofone say, this use on this property will further the purposes of the MLUL, particularly purposes G, M, and H. And as for reconciliation, Ms. Cofone said you could look at the minutes of the master plan. There's lots of testimony about those minutes of the master plan, and what she was saying and what the planning board was finding was that there was a cluster of plants in Howell in this area, and it was concerned about making these plants non-conforming, and it didn't want to have these plants move outside of that area. This is one of those plants. This is that historical area where those clusters of plants were located. There is no usurpation here. This is not the Dover case, the Township of North Brunswick case, the Saddlebrook case. There's support here. And Mr. Doyle went on and quoted the Township of North Brunswick case. I disagree with the findings of that case. And I'm not going to get into the case law, but that case had to do with whether the change or the variance that was granted significantly changed the character of that neighborhood in question. In that case, they found that it did. Here, this does not change the character of this neighborhood. This is an industrial neighborhood. As you heard a couple members of the public say, this has been an industrial neighborhood for 50 years. One member of the public said, I knew when I was buying my property that this was an industrial neighborhood. That's what it is, an industrial neighborhood. You heard testimony regarding the potential negative impacts from the proposed project, but I submit there are no true negative impacts, let alone substantial negative impacts as is required by law. Nothing more than outside of any impact that would be from any other permitted use in the SED zone. In fact, there's less of an impact, as I pointed out by Mr. Dean. If you remember, he came through and he showed you some other potential uses that could be put on that property. And the traffic from those uses was much more than what was being proposed from here. You heard Mr. Carlson state the proposed use would be below the standards for noise from the property, both during daytime and nighttime operations. And L&L ensured the operations during the nighttime would meet because they said they agreed to not manufacture asphalt after 10 p.m. They changed the site circulation during evening hours, added a sound wall in berming, and agreed to remove a residential property from the property to the north of the site, which they own. None of this was counted by Stavola's witness, Mr. Dottie. As you heard from Mr. Dean, the proposed use would be in line with or significantly less than the traffic that can be generated from other permitted uses in the SED zone. The intersection of Route 33 and Yellowbrook Road, that's an existing condition. It's not a good condition right now. My client is adding, as you heard Mr. Dean say, 0.5% of traffic into that intersection. My client is willing to pay their share for a light to be put into that intersection. And as you heard Mr. Dean say, you can take our study, you can bring it over to DOT, And you can use that study that shows that that intersection is failing. But my client's contribution to that intersection is 0.5% during peak hours. This was not countered by Stavola's witness, Joseph Steiger. You heard from Ms. Sutton showed that the proposed facility was state-of-the-art and is designed to exceed all applicable environmental regulations. Literally, this facility could run in any state in the United States and in other countries across the world. It is efficient, it is clean, it is quiet, and there are no health concerns. This was not countered by the company named Stavola. And you heard from Mr. Kennedy, 13 acres of this property will be landscaped with grass and trees. This is a reduction from the current impervious surface area out there, 81.79%. We're dropping that down to 44.9%. That's a reduction by almost half, and it eliminates the non-conformity on this site. This reduction, as I said before, will not only beautify the site with trees and grass and berming, but it will screen the uses. This facility, it will be pushed back towards the back end of this property. It will be screened. You're not going to see it from the road. Also, the reduction is going to reduce stormwater runoff from the site, ensuring its compliance with the applicable stormwater management regulations. Both of these are benefits to the community. And as you heard Lance say, the trucks from the facilities, they're not going to use Cranberry Road unless there's a job on Cranberry Road. And there's enough space on the property so that there will not be queuing on Yellowbrook Road. If you remember the testimony, if someone comes in and their order is not ready, there's enough road, there's parking that's being provided that you could queue. You don't need to go onto Yellowbrook Road to queue. You can come onto the property. And I'm reading my scribble because I was scribbling notes down as Mr. Doyle was going on. I didn't plan on it, but I needed to address a few things. Mr. Doyle went on about the capacity of the plant. As Lance said, one of the reasons that the plant was chosen was that so that different mixes could be made and stored in the silos at different times. Different jobs call for different mixes. Different mixes means how much you use of an aggregate, how much you use. Is it virgin aggregate? Is it a wrap? Certain jobs call for certain measurements. The capacity of this plant was chosen so that different mixes could be used for different jobs and then put into different silos, depending on orders. Mr. Doyle and a lot of members of the public also talked about the capacity of the plant, citing time and again about 400 tons per hour. Remember the testimony. 400 tons per hour is virgin aggregate. That means you're using no wrap. Lance testified to the fact that he is going to use as much wrap as possible. When you put wrap into the mix, that slows down the capacity significantly. That's something that you need to remember. Mr. Doyle also said something that there's no dimensions on the site plan for storing of wrap. Well, that's just flatly untrue. You look at the site plan, there's a big gray area to the top. It's gray. It says this is where Class B would be stored. Mr. Kennedy said if we don't get the Class B, this is where the wrap would be stored. Lance said in his testimony the height out there is 35 feet. So we're at 35 feet. Dimensions, it's not going to be a 70-foot pile. Dimensions, they're there, 35 feet, gray area. I think the calculations that was done with Mr. Doyle's 4.5 acres. I don't know what it is exactly. If that hits capacity, my client's not going to accept any wrap. Plain and simple. They're going to operate with the wrap that they have. Concerning the heights of the silos, you heard Ms. Cafone testify that the proposed silos are neither the first silos in the area, as you remember, there are 2 current silos on the property, nor are they the highest structures in the area. That goes to the 140-foot water tower on the American Water property, which is elevated from this property by, I think, a 15 to 20-foot hill. Additionally, you heard Ms. Cafone state that the silos will probably not be seen. She went to the back of the Harms property. She looked from that property. And she couldn't see where the silos would be. The back of that property is important because it's abuts a dense woods, and it abuts a portion of the equestrian development, and it's over 1,000 feet away from the property. The proposed silos at the proposed heights is not going to create a new skyline, is not offending any reasons for height regulations, and will not impact the zone plan. Against these facts, what was raised against these facts? Unsubstantiated claims and hyperbole from a company named Stavola. Not one of Stavola's experts talked to my client. Not one expert, except for one who went out without permission, went onto my client's property. You have an expert, I think, in operations who offered an opinion on L&L's business plan, although he never spoke to Larry or Lance, nor did he care to even investigate the market for asphalt production in Monmouth County. And as you heard Mr. Doyle agree to just before, 700,000 tons, one producer, out of, I don't know how many facilities, but Abe entered that into the record, so we know, I think it was 4. It's not the capacity that controls. What controls is the market and the producers in that market. You have a noise expert from Stavola who did not attend all the meetings. He didn't read all the transcripts, and he was unfamiliar with the application. This expert was basically upset that Mr. Croissant didn't show his work. But the expert didn't perform his own calculations to check Mr. Croissant's work. He didn't even know that the numbers that were used by Mr. Croissant to model his noise came directly from Aztec and were actually entered into this record. They're there, Exhibit A30. Their expert didn't look at that, didn't care to look at that. You have an expert who offered an opinion about the amount of impervious coverage of my client's property. She said she calculated that from an aerial picture. She never stepped foot on my client's property. Your experts, your board's experts accepted my client's calculation of impervious coverage. You have an expert who, after trespassing, took some questionable pictures, and he offered an opinion that maybe a certain stormwater permit is required because of this application. That expert didn't even check to see if that permit had been applied for. It's a simple step. He didn't even look. He just came up here and threw out an opinion. And you have an expert, once again, after trespassing. He failed to provide full planning testimony on the appropriate standards for granting the requested variances, use, height, and bulk. And he provided exhibits to you, board members, who you found unreliable. He spoke about certain criteria at length. Yes, he did. But he never fully addressed whether there was a substantial negative impact on the public good of the surrounding community, as is required. And he never provided detailed counter testimony regarding height and bulk variance standards. So board, what's the story here? L&L Paving, Lance and Larry, they provided this board with substantial proofs that met the standards for granting the requested variances. The objector, a company named Stavola, did not sufficiently counter those proofs. Rather, the company named Stavola tried to use hyperbole to make a case. That is not how the MLUL works. That is not how this board works. At the end of this hearing, you are the decider and you will weigh the evidence. And when you do, you'll see that this is the perfect site for this proposed use. This is the situation why you have the right to grant a variance. Once again, thank you for your time over these last 17 hearings, and I look forward to your determination.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentations this evening. It's now my opportunity to advise the board as to the law that governs this particular case. I'll certainly reference NJSA 4055B-70, specifically B1, which is the requirement for a use variance in this case. And I think it's important to just remind the board that the board does have the power to grant a variance to, and I'm reading from the statute, to allow a departure from regulations pursuant to Article 8 of this Act to permit a use or principal structure in a district restricted against such use or principal structure. So there's a D1 variance that the board needs to consider with respect to the operation of the proposed asphalt plant. There's also a D6 height variance. Without getting into the weeds on this, we're talking about the silos here. The board again has the ability to prove a use variance for that as well. My recollection is that there were several C variances for driveway width and structures within the front yard setback and site plan approval, which could be considered either as a C1 or a C2 type variance. So just some general concepts for the board as we move forward, and I will try to be as brief as I can. Remember that the board is the ultimate determiner of the fact, that the board is free to accept or reject the testimony of any of the expert witnesses that have been produced in the case. You determine the weight to be given to the testimony of each and every witness in this particular case. And it's your findings of fact which will indicate the weight that you give. So as I said earlier, the V1 and V6 variances are guided by the Medici case, Medici versus VPR Company. It's a Supreme Court case, 1987. And there's certain proofs which have been alluded to by counsel in your presentations. The applicant who is before the board has the obligation to prove the particular suitability of the site for the proposed use. There are certain aspects of the proof which are required. The applicant must show special reasons which were listed in the municipal land use law, and they're commonly known as the positive criteria. In other words, that Mr. Doyle and Mr. Butler had indicated that Ms. Cafone had said certain things about the purposes of zoning being served by this particular application, and that the evidence also needs to be shown that the general welfare is promoted by placing the proposed facility at this location due to its particular suitability. So not my words, this is essentially from the Medici case. And the applicant has to prove that the site is particularly fitted or particularly suitable for the proposed use. And I remind counsel for both sides that the Price versus Himeji case, which is 214 NJ 263, another Supreme Court case, indicates that particular suitability does not require proof that the site is uniquely or solely suited to the use. Slight modification of the proof standard in Medici. And as Mr. Doyle pointed out, the positive and the negative criteria, and I do agree with that, have to be reconciled. The negative criteria has to be evaluated, and it has to be evaluated in terms of whether or not this application can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good or without substantially impairing the intent and purpose of the zone plan and ordinances. These proofs are always residing with the applicant. The applicant has the burden of moving these proofs forward, and both positive and negative criteria must be reconciled in order to obtain the use variance. And these proofs go towards the D6 height variance as well. You've heard testimony regarding the height of the silos. You've heard testimony regarding what's presently on site in the vicinity. If the applicant meets the positive and negative criteria, then you would make a finding accordingly. But once again, the applicant's burden is the applicant's and only the applicant's. There's been some testimony on the record regarding the recent Stonequest denial. I need to remind the board, and I'm sure council will not disagree, that every case that's presented before the zoning board stands on its own merits, period. It's not a situation where that the board could point to that case and say, it's exactly on point. You have to find the facts, you have to apply the facts to the law as it is and as it exists. And again, remember that each case stands on its own. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I will submit it back to you. I have no further comments on the law. Thank you.
Any further from the discussion?
Not for me, Mr. Chair. I think you've heard all the testimony from everyone. We've heard from the public. The attorneys have presented their closing arguments, so now I feel like you have all the facts, and it's up to you to decide what you want to do in this case.
Ms. Carwood, Jen.
Okay, board, what is the pleasure of the board?
Members of the board, I want to thank Mr. Butler, Mr. Doyle, and I want to thank the public for all their input. We started this application back in November of 2017. And we've heard testimony throughout from both the applicant and the objector about the site, about impervious coverage, reduction of impervious coverage, adding of landscape. We heard about traffic, we heard about business plans. But what we have to keep in mind is this board is about land use. This SED zone has been in Howell, in this area, since the late 1950s. It's been there over 50 years. And we see here that L&L Paving was trying to establish a bituminous concrete plant using the latest technologies that we heard with testimony from the manufacturer, that it's going to run quiet and be environmentally safe. As we also heard, environmentally safe throughout this country. We've heard about the business plans. We've heard 200,000 tons a year. We've heard up to 1 million tons a year. Whatever L&L Paving does with that equipment is up to them. It's their business plan. Whether that business plan passes or fails, that's their responsibility. But the question that we have here is the ordinance that was passed in July 2017, and that was set before this application came to this board. Once again, the SED zone has been around since the 1950s, and we heard in testimony that the plant and the property that L&L purchased was always a concrete producing plant. It's been there since 1960. And also other plants have been there, including Stavola, with their, as advertised, asphalt and recycling. When we look at two things here, the first issue is bituminous concrete a concrete product? As we just heard, concrete doesn't exist naturally, it needs to be mixed. You need to have aggregate, you need to have some type of binding, and whether you use water or oil, it binds together. It needs to be stored. For asphalt, for bituminous concrete, it needs to be stored in silos and kept warm. Whereas concrete pipe, Concrete slab can be made outside, made inside, and it has to be stored. And finally, it has to be shipped to its destination. It can be shipped in small trucks, like bituminous concrete, looks at the characteristics, but depending on the concrete product, it could be a very large truck. And depending on the situation, it could be done day or night. The second thing is the site that they purchased. It was submitted as evidence that the site started in 1960 and then ceased operation in 2014. But the site was never abandoned by concrete product. It was never changed to what a permitted use could be, like a textile or lumber or leather products. It's always been a concrete producing plant. Even though it hasn't been in production for 5 years, this board has seen applications where a site ceased operations for over a decade and then started again. This application is not a new use. It is a continuing of what the site has always been for decades, and that has been a concrete producing plant. I'm going to make a motion to approve this application to have a berm, continue the landscaping, to have a berm in front of the site, that you will have no more than 6 silos, that your bituminous concrete production will stop at 9 p.m. instead of 10. There will be no truck idling on the site while the trucks wait for a load. The truck waiting area will be all concrete. At night, you will not use any audible backup. So the truck is put in reverse, you use the strobe lights. There will be no queuing of trucks on Yellowbrook Road. No trucks will be using Cranberry Road. And the main thing, L&L paving, I'm giving you this motion to approve. Police your trucks.
Really well, right.
Make sure that your trucks follow what I'm putting out as a second that motion. I would like to say for the audience. Can't hear you. Okay, I'm sorry. That's why I took it off. As a board member, we don't take taxes into consideration
to any decision that we make. So it's not like we're out to get ratables, and that's a big influence. We don't do that. Also, we don't take competition into consideration. So, in this particular case, we have a competitor that's the main objector, that's spearheading. We have 54,000 people in Howell Township. We represent them all. We don't represent just small groups. We represent everybody. Whatever is the best for the town.
Hold on.
You're a big joke, okay, sir. Thank you very much. Please hold your comment. We will take a recess, and I will clear the building. If you hear the rest of it, well, please keep your mouths quiet. Thank you.
All right, let's take a recess.
The zoning board will now reconvene.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Sanford. Mr. O'Donnell, seconded motion. Let's put the Mr. O'Donnell is second the motion and is in the process of putting findings of facts on the record. Please continue, sir.
Well, I'd like to say I do care about everybody in town. I've been in this town for 47 years. But I have to do what's right for Howell Township. I've been on this board for 15 years. And, you know, like I said, there's 54,000 people. I see 300 tonight. The other 50,000 didn't complain. They're not here. They didn't write letters. You have a small group of people led by a competitor. And I take that into consideration. And you have every right to complain about not wanting this. So, I agree with you, but I want to put my facts on the record. We didn't even vote yet. There's other members to give their opinion, not just me. So I have quite a bit to say. This has been going on for quite a few years, and I just can't sum it up short. You all had your say, and I've been hearing it for a year and a half. Okay, so now I want my say. With a little respect. Because I've given you all plenty of respect. Okay. Regarding case number BA 1806, L&L Paving Incorporated, this application seeks approval for uses, variances D1, D3, D6, and all waivers requested, and also a height variance. Approval to develop this property as a manufacturing facility with improvements consisting of the removal of a portion of the existing concrete manufacturing facility, rehabilitating the existing storage construction of a quality control building and a weigh station, installation of an office trailer near the existing office with landscaping and a total of 250 trees, and the installation of other associated improvements on the premises known as Block 177, Lot 62.01 at 89 Yellowbrook Road. This application was granted due process as provided in the MLUL New Jersey statute, as would any application. It is important to know this application was deemed complete and scheduled to be heard before the planning board and the council made any ordinance change concerning asphalt plants. This would permit this application to be heard outside of any ordinance change that was done after the application was in process. The application, as far as I'm concerned, started April 2017, and it was deemed complete. And in July 2017, the council made the new ordinance, but L&L paving was already in under the warrant 3 months early. Further, on Tuesday, May 1st, 2018, Howell Township Police Officer Matthew Cherney from the Traffic Safety Unit put into the record his traffic impact assessment report. It is understood that Yellowbrook Road is the appropriate road to be used to gain access to Highway 33. Also, the intersection of Route 33 needs to be updated, and Officer Cherney is contacting the State Department of Transportation to request a review of such improvements. The officer will be including to the state of Department of Transportation the traffic signal warrant analysis and traffic impact assessment for added review. The officer concluded the report with, "I look forward to the project moving forward." Signed by Officer Matthew Cherney, Howell Township Safety Unit. I'd also like to state that the board has a testimony of Christine Cafone, planner, certified New Jersey licensed planner for over 20 years, and she's also a teacher of the MLUL land use law. She's been in front of the board many times, and I find her to be extremely qualified. It was testified that this site is particularly suited for the proposed use. This site has operated as a concrete plant for approximately 50 years, along with historical use as a concrete manufacturer. The character of this area is well established for commercial intensive industrial use. The immediate neighbor to the south manufactures concrete pavers. Across the street is a concrete plant that recently has been running trucks at night up to 8 p.m. There's also George Harms Construction and also a asphalt plant, which is Stavola. Planner Cafone testimony that the Yellowbrook Road area is really the heart of Howell's SED zone. With respect to silos in the SED, there are already present in the neighborhood business, by way of example, you have American Water with 100+ water tower. You have Anchor Concrete, and you also have the Stavola Asphalt that has their own silos. I'm not positive how high they are. To enhance the site's curb appeal to the community, L&L is going to put in a 6-foot berm with an 8-foot evergreen plants on top of the berm. As testified, it is noticed that this project is a reutilization of an existing site. 13 acres of impervious coverage on the 35-acre site will be removed as well. The board planner, the zoning board planner, Jennifer Bean, also a 20-year veteran and a teacher of MLUL law, agrees with Mrs. Cafone. Mrs. Cafone. My mouth is getting sticky here. Yeah, I need it to read. Further, it is on the record that the applicant will contribute pro rata their share for traffic light and off-site improvements. To clarify, testimony states that the purpose of the SED zone is to provide for a variety of economic development opportunities in the area of the township where rail and/or highway infrastructure already is available. Further testimony has described L&L's project as a state-of-the-art facility, which I agree that it will be, and is environmentally friendly, exceeding the California standards, which has some of the most stringent environmental conditions in the United States. Also, board engineer Jack Mallon and Charles Cumberland, the zoning board engineers, have told the board the project fits as proposed. Also, Matt Howard, Deputy Director of Howell Township Code Enforcement, was nice enough to do research for the zoning board regarding any complaints in the existing neighborhood that were telephoned, called in to his office for the last 16 months. There was only one complaint from the entire neighborhood, and it was against the county. It wasn't against Stavola, it wasn't against L&L, it wasn't against any of the businesses there. So nobody was complaining. Also, in the future, if L&L is approved, they will be able to process up to 50% or more of the used old asphalt that is brought back into the factory. This is a huge benefit to the environment because of this new type of facility. I find most of the testimony to be very positive criteria, far outweighing any negative criteria. L&L was not really a difficult case at all. It was made very difficult because of one objector. Okay. This application has been heard 16 times. And the application has been vetted by the public, and as this application is supported by testimony, I vote in favor of this case, BA-1806. I'd like to thank everybody, and that's my opinion. I have 47 years in this town, and 15 years on the zoning board. I've heard many cases, and I understand that nobody likes anything being built close to them. In the last 15 years, I've always heard, not in my backyard, not in my backyard, build it elsewhere, build it elsewhere. Well, there's things that are being built all over. If we had to listen to that every time, there'd be nothing built in town because they didn't want any movie theaters, they didn't want any malls, they didn't want any car dealerships, they didn't want anything as long as it was close to them. We can't go by that. We're going by 54,000 residents. And I don't blame you for objecting. Because if I lived there where you lived, I might object too. I mean, all is fair is fair. We have what I call a turf war here. We have one objector who has an asphalt plant that hasn't been open for years. It's not even running. It's dilapidated. We have the state-of-the-art plant coming in. The other two plants are old and will probably fall by the wayside soon too. So we'll end up with one plant, one state-of-the-art plant. When the council said they didn't want any more asphalt plants, they were thinking of the future. If this one got approved, they didn't want any more. And that was their thinking, in my opinion. And that's all I have to say.
Sure.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes. First thing I'd like to do, so I have it clear in my head, Mr. San Clementi's approval. The last sentence you had said something about the applicant's trucks, and I missed that. I just want to be clear. It said something about the applicant's trucks.
To police their trucks.
Police, thank you. Okay, I didn't hear that. I want to make sure that I was addressing the right thing here. For me, this has been kind of keeping everything in context because it's gone over such a long period of time and so much information coming at us. Taking notes and also taking direction from other board members and looking at the videos over and over again, trying to get everything straight, in my head at least. One of the things, for example, we keep talking about the capacity of this plant, and I just remember Mr. Ready talking about multiple mixes, multiple silos, so I know we go to one extreme, we go to another. I'm going based on testimony here, things that I've heard, that the applicant they're going to do as far as light use, leasing trucks, and the scale of operations. Also, the fact, again, I was going to reiterate what's already been said here about the modern burner, doing research on that and seeing what it truly does is it's a pretty cool setup. And returning acreage back to green, I think, is a great benefit. And because of all that, I vote yes.
Mr. Massa?
Yes, I have to read into the record my findings. I've listened to the L&L application meeting tapes, read transcripts, heard live testimony, have toured the surrounding community around the plant. I must say, a couple of weeks ago, this board did denied an applicant that proposed a far less intrusive use, primarily because the use was not permitted within the zone. We now have before us a similar application, which is a much greater invasive function. The township has decided that there is not to be a new asphalt plant within this zone. Of course, there is one there already. The existing plant owner has staged a vigorous, self-serving opposition campaign against this project. And I may add that if I owned the asphalt plant across the street, I probably would do the same thing. The one aspect that I am concerned with this asphalt plant is the tonnage. I've heard the amount tonight, and I heard it in the testimony, 200,000 tons per year. The opposition expert testimony is closer to 1 million asphalt tons per year. And I agree with the opposition's expert that a much higher amount of asphalt will probably be produced, and therefore there will be substantial increased truck traffic and noise. The key point is the township has said no more asphalt plants. And based upon the rules, as I understand them on the zoning board should try to adhere as close as possible to the township zoning and not superimpose its own determination above those of the township. We just did this a couple of weeks ago, and why are we doing it now? I can see into the township's thinking. When I moved to Howell many decades ago, and of course there were dinosaurs running all around the roads then, that area had, where we're talking, we had a lot of residents there, had the Flame Motel, the Angle Inn, and some roadside bars. Back then, I do not think there would be hardly any concerns about this project. However, times have changed. The neighborhood is dramatically transformed and for the better. There is upscale housing, new shops, and more to come. Our good residents have come out here tonight and reached out for us to say no. They are thinking about life quality and property values, even if it means an economic advantage to the existing asphalt plant. It appears that the township recognized these facts at the 2017 zoning. It was stated at a meeting here that asphalt plants were banned as far back as 1966. In fact, I was correct tonight. Somebody said 1964. This town's region has changed and is more evident and apparent to me. I was traveling down Route 33 this week, and I noticed a new toll development readying. Anytime you see the word toll in front of a new development, you can rest assured it's not low-income housing. I further believe that this new toll development only confirms how the Route 33 corridor is changing. For these reasons, I vote no.
Mr. Mertens?
When I take a look at this application, like all other applications, I make a determination on the positive and the negative criteria. And I've heard both arguments on both sides,
and I appreciate the time both attorneys put into their cases. I felt there was some strong testimony by the engineer for the applicant, the planner, and the representative for this factory, which I think is a state of an art. The other testimony, I believe, was from the owner of L&L, and I believe he is sincere about having an ideal operation and being courteous of his neighbors and everything. But there are a couple issues that I've been very concerned about. Even though this site is going to be extremely improved, it's going to be almost like the Taj Mahal compared to what it is right now, like a sandbox. I still see there's concerns with traffic and noise. And getting later into the testimony, the objector's expert, Mr. Thompson, had a different opinion on the amount of tonnage. And I cannot overlook that, because even if I take the two numbers that I was given, both by Mr. Thompson and by Lance, if I brought them to the middle, there's still going to be a considerable amount of public work which entails nighttime activity. And if this application was based on a daytime operation, I would be all for it. But because there's too many unknowns and I'm concerned of traffic and noise, I'm voting no.
Mr. O'Donnell? You have to vote for the roll call, please.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Orozco?
Okay, I heard both sides all the time. I analyze all the pros and cons. All the facts are under compliance, and I vote yes.
Mr. San Clemente?
My comments still stand. I vote yes.
Thank you. And Chairman Nansen?
Okay. I agree with what my colleagues on both sides have put on the record. You know, I have never tried in the many years that I've been on this board to direct the board on what to vote yes, what to vote no. I try to be fair as I can. A lot of redundancy I don't like, but not to say that, but the applicant came forward with the engineer's plan. That plan was reviewed by our board professionals. There was negotiation or working different issues out that were on the plans, which took quite a while to do. Basically storm drainage, water quality, which was still a work in process at that time. And then I remember our last meeting to where we were discussing with the objector's engineer that they disagreed with the flow rates or the quality of water wasn't going to work. It's been our board's process from as long as I have been on this board that Mr. Mallon, which we spoke of dinosaurs earlier, that Mr. Mallon is a wealth of information, and we on this board have always depended on him to deal with that and advise us. My vote is yes, but I've got some other issues that I want to address. Number one, the applicant engineer is to continue working with the Howell Township. This was under recommendations from the Howell Township to try to improve further the water quality and the water runoff from the site. Out of testimony as it is, they're increasing the water retention on the site by enormous amounts. The 100-year, the 10-year, and the 2-year, are just kind of off the charts on what their retention. I've lived on Yellowbrook Road for almost 28 years. I've lived on there when Stavola was running asphalt night and day, 7 days a week. My house is 71 and a half feet off of Yellowbrook Road. I don't have an issue with the trucks. I have an issue with speeding. That's what I have the issue with. And it's not necessarily the trucks that are doing the speeding. They've been very courteous, both Stavolas, both L&L trucks, whenever they come through there, they're 35 miles an hour. What I have an issue with is pedestrians passing them with the double yellow line. That's a safety issue with me. Getting back to this, there's been testimony. Ms. Capone testified to the criteria. Get the right page. Last page. G. The criteria is G. It would be met. Criteria M would be met. And then the removing of the 13 acres of impervious coverage, the H, H would be met by less traffic, the intensity of the traffic. And I agree with Ms. Beam. The intensity of the I don't know, that's kind of stretching, getting to that I. But the Medici, the applicant has met that criteria in their testimony. They have done physical sound work. Your sound guy actually went out, did the sound metering, put it in a report form. Our professionals have reviewed that. They had no problems with that. Opposition came forward. I asked point blank, did they do any sound testing? They didn't. There was nothing given to the board to go through and say, okay, we see where you're coming from. Okay, now we have information. The stormwater runoff, your professional attacked our professional, my professional. I don't like that because we've depended on his professional opinion for many years. And whenever this board has acted, gosh, as long as I've been on it, they have always dealt with the water retention and the stormwater runoff. It's never been something that the board has really dove into. We're not engineers sitting up here, we're volunteers. Every one of us give our time to go through this. And we depend on our professionals, for starters. They're the ones that advise us. They are not witnesses. They advise us on what their opinions are. And quite frankly, Ms. B disagrees a lot of times with the applicant, in which there was a couple of times she did disagree. I see no issues with the height. It's so far back off of the road, I would say 600 to 700 feet off of the road, behind an existing building. And I really, by the time the berms, the trees from the road, it's going to be a non-issue to me, in my opinion. The other only thing that I am going to touch on is the Stonequest case. This is not a new application as far as concrete production, asphalt production. The intent with the Stonequest, that is an overlay SED property. That's an ARE2 property with the SED overlay. They had to meet a burdens of proof of an ARE2 zone, not an SED zone. They had further and a greater proof to make on that property on the Delphia Road. That's why it was denied. That was the intent of council whenever they changed that ordinance to remove asphalt and concrete out of the SED zones. Because this zone is not the only SED zone within Howell. There are other SED zones. They did not want to see asphalt plants and concrete manufacturing move out of this area. You know, this is where it was combined, and that's where they intended for it. That's my opinion on that base. And I also quoted that opinion in that resolution. You know, that's what the whole intent of council changing that ordinance, not to spread out. This is a heavy industrial area. There's other businesses on here that have not been mentioned. Cranberry Road is loaded with businesses, heavy construction business, heavy equipment, all up and down Cranberry. And so this is not something that is brand new into this zone. So my vote is yes for this. Motion testimony put on the record by both opposition and both applicants.
Sorry, motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, any other business of the board? Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by second. Mr. Sayre. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?